Chapter 13:10. Old Master Xia was already so old, but his temper was still so hot. On the other side of the phone, Xia Beichen was trying to persuade Old Master Xia. Dad, don't worry. Be careful or your blood pressure will rise again. I'm not in a hurry. Look at what he's done to that family. As a man, he couldn't control his lower body and was led by the nose by a woman. As a parent, you can't even take care of your own home. You bring all the dirty and smelly things into your own home. Old Master Xia scolded Hua Xuanong, and Xia Beichen felt very awkward. Hua Xiaoheng didn't mind. He curled his lips and advised, "Granduncle, please take it easy. How are you going to return to the country if you get angry?" Grandfather Xia said angrily, "Don't worry, I'll definitely return next week. I'll get Beichen to prepare a private plane right now." Old Master Xia had to prepare more than one private plane for his return to China. However, this was something for Xia Beichen to worry about, so Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything else. After putting down the phone, Hua Xiaoheng continued with his work. Gu Nianji waited a few days after handing over the indictment to the prosecutor's office. Finally, she received a call from the prosecutor's office asking her to go there in person. Gu Nianji quickly drove to the prosecutor's office. Because of her special identity, the person who came to receive her was a female prosecutor with a relatively high position in the procuratorate. In the small conference room, the female prosecutor smiled and exchanged a few pleasantries with Gu Nianji. Then she said apologetically, "Lawyer Gu, we have carefully reviewed the materials you submitted. We all agree that the evidence you have for suing Luo Jialan for intentional homicide against Miss Song Jining is slightly insufficient." Gu Nianji knew that this matter wouldn't be so easy. Previously, she had also had the attitude of, do your best and leave it to fate. But she wanted to hear what the lady prosecutor had to say. Therefore, he still revealed a very disappointed expression, pursed his lips and said with a gloomy expression, "How could this be? Can't we sue her?" "Of course you can. If you want to sue Luo Jialan for intentional injury, mental abuse or domestic violence, you can. These can all be directly filed in court, there is no need to go through our procuratorate." The female prosecutor's attitude was very amiable. "Also, I've seen the materials you've prepared. They're very detailed and complete. The possibility of a private prosecution winning is very high. But if you want to charge intentional homicide, the possibility of filing a case is almost zero." Gu Nianji clenched her fists and said angrily, "I just can't stand it. Luo Jialan has been mentally abusing a patient who has been severely traumatized for 7 to 8 years. If she doesn't want her to die, then what is? This is your inference, but from the evidence you submitted as a third party, we don't see the need for her to do so. You need direct and subjective evidence to prove that the other party really had a reason to kill Song Jining. But judging from your materials, Luo Jialan has no reason to kill Song Jining. Even if she wanted to avenge her mother, it would be more than enough to mentally abuse her for 7 to 8 years. The female prosecutor's attitude showed that Gu Nianji's evidence was not enough to convince the public to prove that Luo Jialan had a reason to kill Song Jining. The crime of intentional homicide was almost one of the heaviest crimes in the criminal law. Therefore, whether it was the procuratorate or the court, they were very careful in the prosecution and trial of this crime. Gu Nianji talked to the female prosecutor for a long time and finally decided to withdraw her indictment. She planned to go back and think about other ideas. She came out of the procuratorate. There was a lot of traffic and pedestrians in front of the door. The sun was shining brightly above her head, and early summer had arrived as scheduled. After turning a corner to the parking lot, Gu Nianji got into the car and drove aimlessly through the city. Unknowingly, she found herself at the Institute of High-Energy Physics where Song Jining was located. Since she was here, she should go and see Miss Song. Ever since she had returned from Russia, Miss Song had thrown herself into another round of crazy experiments and had no contact with the outside world at all. Gu Nianji registered her intentions at the sentry box at the entrance of the Institute of High-Energy Physics and showed her identification before she was allowed to enter. She was surprised to find that the security system here was much better than before. Other than the sentries at the door being replaced by regular soldiers, there should be many hidden sentries around. The cameras on the walls were densely packed, and they could monitor any angle without any blind spots. Gu Nianji arrived at Song Jining's laboratory building with ease. There was another sentry at the door, and a female security guard came over with a detector to examine her from head to toe. There was also a special device to examine the computer bag and briefcase she carried with her. It was almost exactly the same as the security system on the plane. Gu Nianji clearly remembered that it hadn't been so troublesome to come here before. She was slightly surprised and went to the 6th floor where Song Jining was. The laboratory building wasn't tall. It didn't stand out among the surrounding high-rise buildings, but it was also particularly hidden. Miss Gu, you're here. Please sit for a while. Director Song is in the middle of an experiment. It will be over in a few minutes. Song Jining's assistant greeted Gu Nianji warmly and placed a bottle of mineral water on the table. Please enjoy. Why are you being so polite with me? Go and do your work. I'll sit by myself for a while. Gu Nianji waved her hand and smiled as she sat in the small sitting room in Song Jining's office. She took out her laptop and began to edit her indictment. She sat for half an hour and finally waited for Song Jining to finish the experiment. Little Nianji, why are you free to visit me today? Song Jining's pleasant voice came from outside the door before she even arrived. Gu Nianji looked up and saw a beautiful woman in a white coat walking in with a smile on her face. Although she knew Song Jining's real age and was very familiar with her, Gu Nianji would still be slightly dazed every time she suddenly saw Song Jining. It was a feeling of being conquered by true beauty. Gu Nianji composed herself and stood up from the sofa. Miss Song, how do you take care of yourself? I heard that you do experiments every day. Why are you getting more and more beautiful? You're not doing an experiment to preserve your looks, are you? Gu Nianji blinked at Song Jining. Song Jining smiled happily. Her face was rosy and delicate. There was no trace of makeup on, only ordinary moisturizer. However, the luster of her skin spread from the inside out. She was no less beautiful than a 19-year-old girl like Gu Nianji. She touched her face and said contentedly, maybe I'm in high spirits when I'm happy. Look, I'm about to hold my grandchildren. Of course I'm happy. Happiness is the best beauty product. Gu Nianji blushed slightly and said, you only know how to tease me. Isn't it because your experiments are getting better so you're really happy? Gu Nianji knew that to Song Jining, compared to the results of the experiments, her grandchildren were inferior. Of course not. My experiments are as important as my grandchildren. Song Jining smiled as she came to Gu Nianji's side and glanced at her stomach. You suddenly came to see me. Are you pregnant? Xiaoheng still refuses to get married? I'll scold this kid and drag him to the Civil Affairs Bureau with you. Gu Nianji was speechless. She quickly grabbed Song Jining and said in a low voice, of course not. I'm here because I just came from the prosecutor's office. In the end, they think there's not enough evidence to prosecute Luo Jialan for intentional homicide. Song Jining understood and pulled Gu Nianji to sit down with her. Then what's wrong? Or is it really inappropriate? Then let's not prosecute her for intentional homicide. No. Gu Nianji shook her head without hesitation. In the beginning, I really just wanted to teach her an unforgettable lesson and keep her away from my people and my home. But the more I investigated, the more I realized that she really had the intention to kill you. It's just that she was very secretive and didn't want anyone to see through her. At that time, Luo Jialan was still a member of the Huo family. She still had designs on Huo Xiaoheng, so she couldn't let anyone know that she had the intention to kill Song Jining. Because of this, she didn't have any obvious motives for her actions. I see. Little Nianji, I do support you. Song Jining stroked Gu Nianji's long hair regretfully. But if there's no sufficient evidence, it's not that there isn't any. The key is that the prosecutor's office said that there's not enough subjective motive to prove that she wanted to kill someone. Gu Nianji began to complain. I've written all of Uncle Huo's feelings for you in the materials. Even that won't do. This was considered a family scandal of the Huo family. Gu Nianji didn't even want to include this in the materials, but Huo Xiaoheng and Song Jining told her that it didn't matter. Anyway, even if Gu Nianji didn't say this, Luo Jialan would definitely say it in court in order to get away with it. Instead of letting Luo Jialan confuse right and wrong, it would be better for them to tell the whole story first. However, even if this was included in the materials of the indictment, the evidence was still slightly insufficient. Gu Nianji pursed her lips and took out her materials for Song Jining to see. Song Jining read through it quickly and said, the materials you've prepared are very detailed and sufficient. Although I don't know much about legal terminology, I can tell that what you're lacking is the last point. With this point, you'll be able to tie up the entire case. Gu Nianji nodded and asked Song Jining thoughtfully, can you tell me more about your relationship with Luo Xingxue, Luo Jialan, and Uncle Hua? Do you remember everything that happened before your accident? What Song Jining didn't remember was what had happened in the past decade after she had been traumatized. She remembered everything before and after clearly. She thought about it carefully and started from the beginning. I remember one evening, after I finished my experiment and came out of the lab, Huo Guanyuan was smoking at the door. I told him that you can't smoke here. He threw away the cigarette butt and told me that he was getting married. I congratulated him immediately. He smiled and said that he was doing it to deal with his parents' forced marriage and to take care of his comrade's orphan. He told me that Luo Xinxue was already pregnant, and that she was pregnant before marriage. In that era, it was very difficult for a woman to deal with. And he happened to have promised his comrade to take care of her, so he proposed to her and killed 3 birds with 1 stone. Song Jining sighed with a hint of melancholy in her tone. When Gu Nianji heard this, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She grabbed Song Jining and said anxiously, "Wait, what happened? You knew that Luo Jialan wasn't Uncle Hua's biological daughter?" "I knew, but I never told anyone. If it wasn't for the fact that it was later exposed in court, I would have kept it a secret until I died of old age. Think about it, if I told you about such a thing, how would Luo Xinxue conduct herself? And the Hua family wouldn't let her marry into the family." This was the 3rd update of the day, chapter 1300, Killing 3 Birds with 1 Stone. Today was still the 3rd update. Dear friends, don't forget the monthly votes and recommendation votes. Good night, dear friends. Chapter 1311. Gu Nianji looked at Song Jining in disbelief. She thought to herself, Uncle Hua actually told Miss Song such a private matter? Miss Song, Uncle Hua must have trusted you a lot to tell you such a thing? Gu Nianji said carefully, afraid that Song Jining would make unnecessary associations. Song Jining didn't think too much about it. She raised her eyebrows and said proudly, "I'm a very good person. I wouldn't divulge anyone's secret even if they told me it." She was saying it now because it was no longer a secret. Ever since Bai Jini's case, everyone knew that Luo Jialan wasn't Hua Guanyuan's biological daughter. Gu Nianji was a little speechless. She nodded and said, "Does Luo Jialan know that you know her background?" Song Jining frowned and thought about it for a moment. "I'm not sure about that. I didn't tell anyone." During her years of insanity, she only remembered what happened before she was 18 years old, so she probably wouldn't have told anyone about it at that time. For example, Auntie Xing and Auntie Yu, the 2 housekeepers who had taken care of her back then, didn't know at all. They were the people who had been in contact with Song Jining the most over the years. If they didn't know, Song Jining probably hadn't revealed a single word. Gu Nianji was silent for a long time. She thought that if Song Jining had never mentioned this to anyone else, then Luo Jialan wouldn't have killed Song Jining because of this. According to logic, Luo Jialan didn't know that Song Jining was an insider of her background. But why did she do that? She had spent nearly 10 years torturing Song Jining in an attempt to use mental abuse to gradually weaken a mentally ill patient who had suffered severe brain trauma until she lost her life. This method was really killing without spilling blood. Gu Nianji frowned and muttered to herself, "If she didn't know that you knew about her background, then she wouldn't have had any reason to do this. But the truth is that she did do this, so I think she must have found out from other sources that you also know about her background." Then who would be her other source? Gu Nianji thought of someone, Luo Xinxue. She was Luo Jialan's biological mother. Of course, Luo Xinxue knew that Luo Jialan wasn't Hua Guanyuan's biological daughter, and she had told her about it after Luo Jialan became sensible. This was what Luo Jialan had said herself. Could it be that Luo Xinxue knew that Hua Guanyuan had told Song Jining about this? Gu Nianji only felt that her mind was covered in fog. The truth was like a lamp in the fog, faintly discernible. It made people feel that it was close at one moment and far at the next. Miss Song, think about it again. What else did Uncle Hua say to you back then? Is it related to Luo Jialan himself or the entire Hua family? Gu Nianji continued to inspire Song Jining's memories and thoughts. Song Jining closed her eyes. After a while she said, "At that time Hua Guanyuan said that his parents were forcing him to get married, and Luo Xinxue was pregnant. Her fiancé had died trying to save Hua Guanyuan, so he decided to marry her. It would help himself, his comrades and Luo Xinxue. After my mother-in-law passed away, he often went out on missions and was rarely at home. I remember that on the eve of the accident I came out of the lab very late and saw him standing alone under a big tree outside the lab building, smoking. When he saw me coming, he threw away the cigarette and came home with me. On the way he told me." Song Jining felt that something was wrong. Why would Hua Guanyuan say such a thing to her at that time? Unfortunately at that time she had been so focused on the experiment that she had rarely taken care of her own son, let alone ponder the thoughts of her husband's brother. Song Jining opened her eyes in a daze and didn't speak for a long time. Gu Nianji waited patiently by the side until Song Jining's eyes focused again. Gu Nianji asked softly, "What did Uncle Hua say?" Song Jining gritted her teeth. Although she felt a little embarrassed, she still said in a low voice. That day was the day before the big experiment. If we successfully completed the experiment the next day, the project with the military would be completed. Hua Guanyuan was originally a representative of the military, and he represented the military in cooperating with our lab. If the experiment was completed, he would have to leave our lab and go on a mission elsewhere. That night, he said that according to the military's practice, every time they went out on a secret mission, they would write a will in advance. If they were to unfortunately die, their funeral would also be properly arranged. Gu Nianji raised her head abruptly. A will? Uncle Hua has a will. That's right. How could she have forgotten that? When soldiers went out on missions, they would often write a will in advance and hand it over to the military instructor. If they came back alive, of course, the will would be returned to be invalid. If they didn't come back alive, this will would be their last words in this world. However, Gu Nianji was only happy for a moment before she deflated like a ball that had been pricked by a needle. Because if Hua Guanyuan had a will, it could only prove that Xie Xian's trust fund in Luo Jialan's hands was a completely legal inheritance. Then there would be no way for them to recover the money in the trust fund from Luo Jialan. No wonder Luo Jialan was so confident and happy to use the Xie family's money. Gu Nianji was frowning as she thought about how to get out of this situation when she heard Song Jining say, "Yes, Hua Guanyuan said he made a will and wanted to give all his assets to Xiaoheng." Gu Nianji looked up in surprise and glared at Song Jining. Her emotions were like a roller coaster. She couldn't control herself because of Song Jining's words. "What did you say?" "Uncle Hua said he made a will and wanted to give all his assets to Major General Hua?" Gu Nianji asked in a trembling voice. Song Jining nodded slightly, her face a little red. "Yes, you also think it's inappropriate, don't you? I politely refused at the time and said that it was his property and should be left to his own children. But he said that he didn't have anyone he liked in his life. He married Luo Xingxue to take care of her and give her and the child in her stomach a name. He also said that although they were married, he had never touched her." Gu Nianji covered her forehead with her hand and covered her eyes. She couldn't take it anymore, she was a little dizzy. Uncle Hua was too coquettish? But isn't it unfair for him to do this to Luo Xingxue? Gu Nianji composed herself and asked softly, "By doing this, Uncle Hua is making Luo Xingxue a widow?" Song Jining nodded and said with a wry smile, "I said the same thing back then. I said that since he was married to Luo Xingxue, he had to shoulder the responsibilities of a husband. Otherwise it would be too unfair to Luo Xingxue." Then what did Uncle Hua say? Gu Nianji was very curious and couldn't help but gossip. He said that he and Luo Xingxue had an agreement. When Luo Xingxue found someone she liked, he would divorce her and let her find her own happiness. If she didn't want children, she could leave Luo Jialan in the Hua family. Because Luo Jialan is Hua Guanyuan's daughter in name, he didn't deny the whole thing to the outside world. As long as he doesn't say it and Luo Xingxue doesn't say it, no one will know Luo Jialan's true identity. But you know? Gu Nianji quietly reminded Song Jining. Song Jining looked at her strangely, as if she was surprised that she had said that. She told her disapprovingly, "But I won't tell anyone. Hua Guanyuan told me about it because he knew I would keep it a secret." The corners of Gu Nianji's mouth twitched. "I'm afraid Uncle Hua didn't tell you about it because you could keep it a secret, right?" This was really, she finally understood why Hua Guanyuan was so much more outstanding than his younger brother Hua Guanchen, but he couldn't win over Song Jining, a beauty with a high IQ and low EQ, because his overly reserved way of expressing himself didn't work at all on a mad scientist like Song Jining. And Hua Guanchen had probably used a very straightforward way of pursuing her to move the heart of a genius beauty who was very straightforward in terms of love. Song Jining's EQ wasn't low, but she was a little off when it came to love. She probably didn't expect Hua Guanyuan to like her at the time. It wasn't until 17 years later, when Bai Jini's case was being tried, that Song Jining realized that this person she had known for a long time had secretly had feelings for her. However, she had been worried that this was truly a strange combination of factors that made one sigh. Not only would he help someone else raise a child, but he would also lose all his assets. Now that she had heard Song Jining's words, she felt that Hua Guanyuan was still a normal person. Although he was stubborn when it came to relationships, at least he wasn't too muddle-headed. He didn't give his mother Xie Xian's assets to an outsider. Instead, he chose to leave it to his nephew, Hua Xiaoheng. Gu Nianji sighed in her heart and continued to ask excitedly, "What about Uncle Hua's will?" Song Jining frowned. "I don't know. Didn't the military announce his will?" Hua Guanyuan and Song Jining had met with an accident in that experiment. Hua Guanyuan's body had been destroyed in the explosion, and Song Jining had been pushed out of the laboratory at the last moment. Her head had suffered a severe concussion, and her memory had stopped at the age of 18. She had become a serious mental patient. Therefore, Song Jining had no idea what happened to Huo Guanyuan after that. However, this question wasn't difficult to answer. Song Jining didn't know, but Huo Xiaoheng should know. If Huo Xiaoheng didn't know, there was still General Ji. Huo Guanyuan was a martyr of the military. There must have been rules and detailed records of how he had handled his funeral. Gu Nianji recalled that during the trial of Bai Jini's case, she seemed to have mentioned what Huo Guanyuan's belongings were. She clearly remembered that Huo Guanyuan's will had not been mentioned at that time. If it had been mentioned, Gu Nianji definitely wouldn't have overlooked such an important thing. Whether the will had not been fulfilled at all, or whether the will had not been announced was what Gu Nianji wanted to investigate next. She came out of Song Jining's laboratory and couldn't wait to call Huo Xiaoheng. Huo Xiaoheng's phone rang with a busy tone. It was probably inconvenient for him to answer the phone. Gu Nianji sent him a text message. Major General Hua, do you know where your uncle's will is? This is the first update of the day, Chapter 1301, How to Woo a Genius Beauty. A reminder for everyone about the monthly votes and recommendation tickets. There are 2 updates today. We'll update again when the monthly votes reach 1800. The second update at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1312. When Huo Xiaoheng saw Gu Nianji's message, it was already an hour later. He had just come out of the conference room and turned on his phone when he saw the message. He was slightly taken aback and subconsciously called Gu Nianji. Nianji, why do you ask? Wearing a Bluetooth headset, he walked unhurriedly down the long corridor. His leather boots made a rustling sound on the floor, echoing in the corridor. Gu Nianji had already returned to Huo Xiaoheng's official residence. After taking a shower, she sat on the windowsill of the bay window with her long hair draped over her shoulders. She looked at the colorful flowers in the small garden downstairs and muttered to Huo Xiaoheng, Major General Hua, I just came back from Miss Song's place and heard something from her. Huo Xiaoheng stopped in his tracks and asked calmly, What is it? My uncle's will? That's one thing. There's another thing. Your uncle told your mother that Luo Jialan wasn't your uncle's biological daughter long before he married Luo Xinxue. Huo Xiaoheng was a little surprised. Did Miss Song know that Luo Jialan wasn't my uncle's biological daughter many years ago? Yes, Miss Song didn't tell anyone. How do you think Luo Jialan knew that Miss Song knew about her background? Huo Xiaoheng thought for a moment and said, The most likely possibility is Bai Jini. Gu Nianji's eyes widened. No way. I've always guessed that it was Luo Xinxue. Luo Xinxue had told Luo Jialan the truth about her background after she became sensible. Could it be that she had also told Luo Jialan that Song Jining knew about it? Huo Xiaoheng said calmly. Luo Xinxue didn't have the chance to know about it. She didn't know Miss Song at all before she married my uncle. Then how could it be Bai Jini? Gu Nianji was surprised. Bai Jini didn't say a word during the last court trial. I think Bai Jini didn't know that this matter was so important that Luo Jialan wanted to kill her. Huo Xiaoheng analyzed calmly. Judging from the situation between Luo Jialan and Bai Jini at the time, the two of them had been friends for a long time. They could be considered best friends despite their age difference. Okay, then let's analyze it. First of all, how did Bai Jini know about this? Where did she find out? Gu Nianji's interest was piqued. She loved reasoning and reasoning. Huo Xiaoheng smiled. Is Lawyer Gu here to interrogate me? As he spoke, he walked to his office and pushed the door open. Huo Xiaoheng returned to his desk and sat down. He closed the door and said to Gu Nianji, There are 2 reasons why I think it's Bai Jini. First, she and my mother were doing experiments in the same lab. When my uncle talked to my mother, she was the one who had the chance to be the one who had ears. In other words, it was very likely that Bai Jini had happened to overhear Huo Guanyuan's conversation with Song Jining. Gu Nianji remembered Song Jining's description of the scene. It happened outside her lab. What if Bai Jini had been in the lab at the time? Gu Nianji nodded. That makes sense. What about the second reason? The second reason is, of course, that Bai Jini has always had a crush on my uncle, so it's very likely that she's been keeping an eye on my uncle's movements. I understand. This means that Bai Jini had an objective opportunity and motive to come into contact with this secret. Although it's a deduction, it's very close to the truth. Gu Nianji twirled her hair with her fingers and nodded approvingly. And later, Bai Jini and Luo Jialan became friends, so she had more opportunities to talk about this matter. Huo Xiaoheng smiled. Lawyer Gu is still the best. You immediately summarized it. You're not allowed to laugh at me. Gu Nianji sat up straight and joked with a smile. If you laugh at me again, I'll ignore you. Huo Xiaoheng chuckled and ignored her coquettishness. He continued, although I have 2 reasons to prove that Bai Jini is the most likely third party to know about this matter, I don't know why she didn't take advantage of this and push the blame onto Luo Jialan in Bai Jini's case. I think she was also fooled by Luo Jialan. Gu Nianji shrugged. Luo Jialan will definitely tell Bai Jini that she knew about this a long time ago. Her mother didn't hide it from her since she was young. If that's the case, Bai Jini won't think this news is so explosive, and she won't reveal the whole thing in court. Because she doesn't think that doing so will help her get away with her crime. Instead, she will be looked down upon even more because of her eavesdropping behavior. That might be the only explanation. Huo Xiaoheng curled his lips in admiration. It's closer to the truth than the reason I thought of myself. Huo Xiaoheng is too kind. I was just saying. Gu Nianji pretended to be reserved and modest. Huo Xiaoheng pursed his lips. He could almost see Gu Nianji's big eyes narrowing. She was like a cat being tickled under the sun. He couldn't help but want to hold her in his arms and dote on her. Major General Hua, I want to see Bai Jini. Gu Nianji turned on her phone and checked. She was sentenced to death 1.5 years ago with a 2-year reprieve. There's only half a year left until the execution. Will her sentence be commuted to life imprisonment? Generally speaking, most of the suspended death sentences would be commuted to life imprisonment in the end. If they were reformed well during this period, they might even be released with a reduced sentence. Huo Xiaoheng said lightly, if you want to see her, hurry up and see her. Her death sentence was actually suspended for 2 years. Gu Nianji could hear the viciousness in Huo Xiaoheng's tone. It seemed that he had made up his mind. Otherwise, Bai Jini would have a chance to get out of prison alive. Gu Nianji immediately said, then I'll apply to see Bai Jini. Bai Jini was on death row. Although her sentence was suspended for 2 years, she was still being held in solitary confinement. Gu Nianji was also a little curious. Bai Jini's brother, Bai Jianqing, was the new prime minister. Didn't he think of a way to get Bai Jini out of prison as soon as possible? However, Huo Xiaoheng's attitude just now made it clear that he refused to see Bai Jini have any chance of commuting her sentence. He wanted her to be executed. Even if her sentence was suspended for 2 years, it would only be a suspension. He wanted her to die without delay. Gu Nianji immediately found the prison where Bai Jini was being held and applied for a visit. Bai Jini was the key to her current case. Through Bai Jini she could connect Luo Jialan and Song Jining. Bai Jini could prove that Song Jining had long known about Luo Jialan's true background. At the same time, Bai Jini could also prove that she had told Luo Jialan about it. Coupled with Huo Guanyuan's missing will, all of this together could prove that Luo Jialan really had a motive to kill. Hello? Is this Green City Women's Prison? I'd like to apply to see Ms. Bai Jini there. Gu Nianji politely called Green City Women's Prison. The women prisoners here were all felons. The prison staff politely asked Gu Nianji to show her identification. After checking her name, the staff said regretfully, I'm sorry, you're not on the visitation list. If you want to come to our Green City Women's Prison, you can call Bai Jini first and get her verbal permission to come in. Then may I ask what Bai Jini's phone number is? Gu Nianji asked with a smile. She's a felon. Does she have a phone and internet in her room? Of course not. Cold sweat broke out on the man's forehead. As he spoke, he called Bai Jini over and asked her to answer the phone. This is today's second update, Chapter 1302, The Messenger. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. There are 2 updates today. When the monthly votes reach 1800, we'll do it again. Moi. Chapter 1313. Bai Jini walked into the small room in her striped prison uniform. She adjusted her gold-rimmed glasses with her hand and said slowly, Who's calling? She said she's a lawyer. Her surname is Gu. A lawyer with the surname Gu? Bai Jini frowned and immediately thought of someone she hated. She immediately turned around and walked out. I won't see her. The prison staff responsible for answering the phone did not stop her. He said helplessly to Gu Nianji on the other end of the phone, Did you hear that? She won't see you. What can I do? Prisoners also had human rights. If she didn't want to see you, how could she force her? Gu Nianji chuckled and said, She won't see me? Tell her I'll ask her brother, Prime Minister Bai, and see if she'll still want to see me if her brother shows up. Gu Nianji knew that Bai Jini's only hope of getting out alive was her brother, Prime Minister Bai Jianqing. Gu Nianji threatened Bai Jini with Prime Minister Bai, so Bai Jini would definitely be wary. As expected, the staff stopped Bai Jini, who was walking out, and said, Lawyer Gu said that if you don't see her, she'll go to Prime Minister Bai and ask him to speak. As expected, Bai Jini stopped in her tracks and cursed Gu Nianji for being too cunning. But she couldn't let Gu Nianji really go to her brother. She knew that Gu Nianji was a stubborn little girl. Not only was she capable, but she also had Hua Xiaoheng behind her. She couldn't afford to offend or hide, so she had to see him. Bai Jini turned around and walked back. She took the phone from the staff with a straight face and said woodenly, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I'm Gu Nianji. You should remember me." "Oh, Gu Nianji? I don't remember." Bai Jini denied it flatly because she didn't want Gu Nianji to have an easy time. Gu Nianji didn't mind and said lightly, "You don't remember me? How old are you? You're already suffering from Alzheimer's disease and memory loss?" "Shut up." Bai Jini was so angry at Gu Nianji's words that her chest heaved up and down. She could barely control her temper. Gu Nianji curled her lips and her voice was still calm. "Do you remember? Let's get back to business. I want to see you. The prison guard said that he can only see you if you agree, so I called first to ask for your permission." Bai Jini's face twitched. She wanted to say, "I don't agree," but Gu Nianji had already said, "If you don't agree, I'll go talk to Prime Minister Bai. Let's see if Prime Minister Bai will do me a favor and let a busy man like you see me." His tone was not without sarcasm, but it also carried a hint of threat. Bai Jini's older brother, Bai Jianqing, was the prime minister, and a prime minister who cherished his reputation. There were 4 siblings in the Bai family and 2 of them were in trouble. The second brother, Bai Yuxing, had committed treason. His expression was calm as he flipped through the records related to the list of people who died in the experimental accident, the inventory of their belongings, the list, and the final delivery procedures. Wu Guanyuan, male, 36 years old, senior colonel rank, died in. His belongings are all handed over to his wife Luo Xinxue. However, his will was not listed in the list of belongings. Could it be that his will was only handed over to his wife? It wasn't recorded? The receipt signed by Luo Xinxue was also placed in his information room, and there was no separate will listed in it. This was a little strange. Could it be that there really wasn't a will? However, he had a hunch that since Hua Guanyuan had mentioned it to Song Jining, he probably wasn't lying to her. Hua Xiaoheng frowned and thought for a while. In the end, he put down the information and left the information room. He saw that it was almost dawn, so he and Yin Shixiang laid down in the lounge upstairs for a while to rest. When it was 7 o'clock, he and Yin Shixiang left the information room building to look for General Ji. General Ji had just returned from his morning exercise and met Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang at the door. "Xiaoheng, Big Xiong, good morning." General Ji greeted them with a smile. Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang stood at attention and saluted. "Good morning, Chief." Good. Don't be so restrained. Come, have you had breakfast? If you haven't, let's eat together." General Ji kindly brought Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang into his house. They didn't stand on ceremony and followed General Ji to his restaurant for breakfast. General Ji liked old people's tastes. In the morning he had golden fried dough sticks, soy milk, and a steamer of white, fat and hot tofu skin buns. The fillings inside were all vegetarian. There were tofu, vegetarian chicken, tofu, shepherd's purse and fresh mushrooms. It was very delicious. However, although it tasted good, it wasn't enough for Hua Xiaoheng and Yin Shixiang. The 2 of them ate 5 tofu skin buns each, but they still felt like they hadn't eaten at all. They could only eat a few more fried dough sticks. General Ji looked at the 2 of them emotionally and said, "It's still good to be young. Everything tastes good." Hua Xiaoheng, Yin Shixiang almost choked on a mouthful of fried dough stick. It took him a long time to swallow it. Hua Xiaoheng glanced at him and he immediately understood and said, "What would you 2 like to drink?" Hua Xiaoheng ordered Colombian black coffee, and General Ji still wanted tea. Yin Shixiang took the opportunity to leave the restaurant and go to the kitchen to make coffee and tea so that Hua Xiaoheng and General Ji could speak alone. "General Ji, I have a private matter to ask you." Hua Xiaoheng lowered his voice. "If you think it's inconvenient, you don't have to say it. Please don't feel pressured." "You brat, don't give me that. Tell me what's the big deal." General Ji smiled as he took out a cigar and knocked it on the dining table. Hua Xiaoheng quickly took the blade and helped General Ji cut the cigar. He then lit it with a lighter and said, "It's like this. I want to ask, who did my uncle give his will to?" General Ji was stunned. Hua Guanyuan's will? He didn't give it to his family? Didn't he have a wife and daughter? Hua Xiaoheng looked at General Ji without batting an eyelid. "My aunt has already passed away. She was killed by Bai Jini. His daughter, Luo Jialan, is not his biological daughter, but the posthumous child of his comrade. General G slapped his forehead in realization. Oh, I'm getting old. My memory is really bad. I remember now. That's true. Sai, your uncle is so pitiful. He sacrificed himself for the country and didn't even leave behind a descendant. Huo Xiaoheng nodded. I also just remembered that as a soldier, my uncle would definitely have a will when he carried out that kind of mission. However, I didn't see a will on the list of his belongings. General G took a puff of his cigar and looked at the French window across from him. He said softly, Xiaoheng, in the era when your uncle died, the will didn't specify that it must be listed on the list of his belongings. Huo Xiaoheng, at that time he was only 12 years old and hadn't joined the army yet, so he didn't know about these things. Because in that era soldiers who died had a will to leave to their families. This was a convention and there was no need to specifically mention it. Everyone knew about it, so the military didn't insist that the will be listed as one of the belongings on the list. Huo Xiaoheng understood. Then the reason why the will was listed as one of the belongings on the list was because something happened, right? Yes. General G said straightforwardly, something did happen later. The will of the soldier who died was maliciously intercepted, destroyed or tampered with, causing a lot of property disputes. Later, the military forcibly stipulated that the will was also a relic of the soldier who died and must be listed on the list of belongings. When it was handed over to the family had to sign to indicate that they had received the will. He stared at Huo Xiaoheng. It seems that your uncle's will was also intercepted or destroyed. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken them 17 years to track down the whereabouts of the will. Huo Xiaoheng thought for a moment. Do you still remember who was in charge of the will at that time? This is the first update of the day, Chapter 1303, Falling. A reminder for everyone about your monthly and recommended tickets. Today is the third update. The monthly ticket is 1,800 plus updates at 1 p.m., and the third update is at 8 p.m. My dear friends are so amazing, so awesome. Chapter 1314. General G thought about it for a while and rubbed his white beard with one hand. He suddenly frowned and glanced at Huo Xiaoheng. What's wrong? Do you remember now? Huo Xiaoheng asked immediately. Although he reacted quickly, he wasn't particularly anxious. His tone was still neither fast nor slow, making it difficult to figure out his thoughts. General G nodded slightly. He thought he would tell Huo Xiaoheng. He should be more reliable than his father, Huo Guanchen. He raised the cigar in his hand and took a few more puffs. General G lowered his eyes and said calmly, if I remember correctly, your uncle's suicide note was given to a vice president of the military for safekeeping. A vice president of the military? Who is it? Huo Xiaoheng lowered his head and took out his phone. He began to search for the vice presidents of the military 17 years ago. There was only one president of the military, but there could be several vice presidents. There were 8 at most and 3 at least. Huo Xiaoheng couldn't remember who the vice presidents of the military were at that time. On his phone, the list of all the vice presidents of the military from 17 years ago was displayed on the military intranet. Every one of them had a name, photo, and a simple resume. The first on the list was Huo Xiaoheng's grandfather, Huo Xuanong, the father of Huo Guanyuan, who had died. Huo Xiaoheng's fingers paused. There was no need to ask any more. He knew who had the suicide note. Huo Xiaoheng raised his head as usual and smiled. Thank you for your guidance, General G. I'll go back and ask now. Don't worry. General G smiled and took a puff of his cigar. He said meaningfully, your grandfather is old. He was very stubborn back then, so he must be even more stubborn now. You have to smooth things over. Don't make the old man sick. Huo Xiaoheng stood up and saluted solemnly. Yes, Chief. It was already around 9 in the morning when he returned to his Special Operations Forces headquarters from the military headquarters. Huo Xiaoheng returned to his official residence and handed his military hat to the orderly. He asked casually, where's Nianji? What's she doing? The orderly quickly said, reporting, Chief. Miss Gu drove out early in the morning. She said she was going to Green City and asked you to call her if you needed anything. Huo Xiaoheng's hand, which was being held by Jie Fengji, paused. He slowly looked at the orderly. She went to Green City? The most famous prison in Greentown was the Greentown female prison. She quickly remembered that Baijini was being held there. She must have gone to see Baijini. Huo Xiaoheng breathed a sigh of relief. He took off his military jacket and hung it in the closet at the entrance before going upstairs to rest. Gu Nianji had already arrived at the reception room of Green City Women's Prison and was sitting opposite Baijini. She smiled at Baijini and nodded. Physicist Bai, long time no see. You look just as good as before, and your figure and skin are much better than when you were in prison. Gu Nianji remembered seeing Bai Jini in court a year and a half ago. Her skin was a little dark, and there were deep crow's feet at the corners of her eyes. She was also slightly chubby. But now Bai Jini, who was sitting in front of her, was much fairer and thinner. She was at least 2 sizes smaller, but the skin on her face was not loose. Instead, it was taut and stylish, and there was a faint luster in the sunlight from the window. She seemed to be having a good time in prison. Gu Nianji's eyes turned cold. Bai Jini was also looking at Gu Nianji. After not seeing her for a year and a half, the little girl's eyes were much sharper than before. They had lost their childishness and looked mature and steady. Her eyes were extremely large and black, and her jade-like pupils were like fine black gold velvet. They were so black that they had a texture to them. Her tall and well-embroidered nose bridge made her face look very three-dimensional, and she had the bright beauty of a European woman. Any Eastern woman with such looks was a peerless beauty. Bai Jini's gaze slid from Gu Nianji's beautiful face to her bulging chest. Gu Nianji was wearing a loose half-sleeved knitted sweater made of crystal blue silk and cotton blend with a little cashmere. The opening of the collar revealed her delicate collarbone. The Van Cleef and Arpels monochrome necklace around her neck was simple and elegant. It inadvertently highlighted the details and had a low-key luxury. Long hair draped over her shoulders, bright eyes and spirited eyes. This was the kind of woman who described her. Bai Jini sighed softly in her heart, and her expression darkened. The Song Jining of the past was so similar to the Gu Nianji now. They were both talented and beautiful girls, and they both had men who truly loved and valued them. However, Song Jining's taste was much worse than Gu Nianji's. A strange smile appeared on Bai Jini's face as she thought viciously. Gu Nianji raised an eyebrow and placed her hands on the long conference table in front of her. She said softly, "Bai Jini, have you ever thought about why I came to see you?" Bai Jini raised her head. "That's a question you should be thinking about. Why should I waste my time thinking about such a boring question?" She expressed her disdain by ignoring her. Gu Nianji shook her head. "Why bother? Haven't you ever thought about who caused you to be in prison now, from a promising physicist to this state?" The corners of Bai Jini's mouth curled into a mocking smile. She leaned forward and said, "I've thought about it. The culprit who caused me to be in prison from a promising physicist to a qualified end is you, Lawyer Gu." Gu Nianji curled the corners of her lips and smiled. "Is that so? I'm honored, but unfortunately you're wrong." As she spoke, Gu Nianji added, "No wonder you're not as good as Ms. Song. Your IQ, intuition and acuity are far inferior to hers." Bai Jini could no longer maintain her composure. She stood up with a swoosh and sneered, "If you keep talking, I won't entertain you any more." She turned around and walked towards the door of the reception room. Gu Nianji watched coldly as she walked towards the door. Just as Bai Jini's hand was on the door handle, Gu Nianji said, "Bai Jini, Huijialan didn't know that Song Jining knew about her background until you told her." Bai Jini's hand froze. Her eyes suddenly widened. She suddenly turned around and walked back quickly. She placed her hands on the conference table and asked anxiously, "What did you say? Say it again." Gu Nianji crossed her arms and smiled confidently. "The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. You think you're the oriole, but in fact you're just the oriole that the hunter has placed in the net." "Huijialan? Oh no, it should be Luo Jialan. She's changed her surname and moved out of the Hua family's household registration." Gu Nianji stared fixedly at Bai Jini, not missing the slightest change in her expression. Instead of beating around the bush to interrogate Bai Jini, she went straight to the point. "So can you tell me, when did you tell Luo Jialan that Song Jining was also an insider of her background?" This kind of direct questioning method could make the other party subconsciously answer the question she wanted to hide the answer to the question she wanted to hide. Bai Jini's lips trembled, and her eyes shone as she looked at Gu Nianji. "What do you mean by this? Tell me first, when did you tell Luo Jialan that Song Jining was also an insider of her background?" Gu Nianji repeated calmly and opened her arms. She held a pen and a recording pen in her hand. "Tell me. Maybe I can piece together another timeline and help you find the person who escaped the net to help you commit the crime." This was the second update of the day. Monthly votes of 1,800 plus updates had arrived. Chapter 1304, The Fish That Escaped the Net. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. 8 p.m. the third update. Chapter 1315. Bai Jini looked at Gu Nianji in surprise. Collaboration? A fish that slipped through the net. Yes, I'll say it again. You think you're using someone else as a gun, but have you ever thought that you're actually someone else's gun? Gu Nianji smiled faintly, as beautiful as a night epiphyllum. Bai Jini frowned and said uncomfortably, "That was a long time ago. Hua Jialan and I just happened to, Luo Jialan, she's changed her name now." Gu Nianji corrected her. Luo Jialan, I accidentally told Luo Jialan about her background, time, place and who was there at the time. Gu Nianji asked. Is that important? Bai Jini looked at Gu Nianji in confusion. It's been so long. Of course it's important. Do you think I have nothing better to do than to come here and tell you about the past? Gu Nianji raised an eyebrow and was a little impatient. You've already experienced the consequences of hiding something from a lawyer, haven't you? In the case of Luo Xinshua's murder, Bai Jini had hidden some facts from her defense lawyer. In the end, she had been very passive in court. Gu Nianji had seized on the loophole and pursued her relentlessly. In the end, she had been convicted. What substantial benefit does that do me? Bai Jini wasn't someone who would be at a disadvantage. Her eyes calmed down. Can my case be overturned? Gu Nianji lowered her eyes and didn't comment. That depends on how much you say and what the truth is. Then can it prove that I was wronged? I demand to be released from prison immediately. Bai Jini stood up excitedly. Can you? If you can't, I won't say it. Gu Nianji's well-defined lips curled up. She looked up at Bai Jini. After Luo Jialan took over Song Jinning's care, did you intentionally or unintentionally reveal to her that Song Jinning knew about her background? Bai Jini's eyes darted around as her mind raced. Finally she sneered, no comment. She then turned around and left the reception room. The prison guard took her back to her cell. Gu Nianji slowly stood up and waited for a while before walking out of the reception room. She said to the other prison guard at the door, could you please show me Bai Jini's cell? The prison guard was stunned. You want to see Bai Jini's cell? Do you have a visiting certificate? Does her verbal promise count as proof of visitation? Gu Nianji raised her chin in the direction where Bai Jini had disappeared. There's evidence of her phone surveillance recording. The prison guard made a phone call to his superior. After confirming it, he said, please follow me. Gu Nianji followed the prison guard to Bai Jini's cell. The Greentown Women's Prison imprisoned felons. Only those who had been sentenced to at least 15 years in prison could be locked up here. Along the way the security was tight and there were cameras everywhere. The doors with iron bars were tightly shut, and the world inside and outside the door were two completely different worlds. Gu Nianji walked quietly until the prison guard stopped in front of a single cell. He pointed and said, this is Bai Jini's cell. Gu Nianji walked forward. Open the door. The prison guard keyed in a few passwords on the display beside the door, and the door quietly opened. Of course, the iron fence made of thin iron rods was still tightly shut. Gu Nianji looked up and saw the situation in the cell. She smiled and quickly took a photo with her phone. The facilities in Bai Jini's single cell were really good. The room wasn't small. It was at least 20 square meters. Under the south-facing window was a desk with a laptop on it. Next to the desk was a small three-tiered bookshelf, which was densely packed with books. Under the east wall was a single bed with snow-white sheets. The bedside lamp was exquisite and cute. A curved LCD television hung on the west wall. There were two single sofas under it and a small coffee table in the middle of the two sofas. On the other side of the single sofa was an elliptical machine. Could be used for running, stretching and heart rate monitoring. Gu Nianji clicked her tongue. Are you here to go to prison or to retire? She turned to look at the prison guard. I never knew that our country's felony prison could have such good facilities. It's really comparable to the felony prison cells in Oslo, Norway. I think this place should be called a nursing home, not a women's prison. While it's hard for law-abiding ordinary people to buy a room, our felons are already living in a nursing home in a developed country. I think the public will be very happy to know that. Gu Nianji didn't say anything else and turned to leave. The faces of Bai Jini and the prison guard outside the cell darkened. Bai Jini understood and rushed to the door to stop Gu Nianji. She said anxiously, don't go. I'll tell you everything you want to know. She knew very well that Gu Nianji was threatening her. If she didn't tell her, she would spread the word about her treatment in prison. When that time came, she wouldn't be the only one to suffer. More importantly, her brother, Bai Jianqing, who had just become prime minister. Gu Nianji had noticed from the phone call that Bai Jini's treatment in prison was unusual. She had already made several preparations. If Bai Jini cooperated obediently, she wouldn't make things too difficult for her. Anyway, she was going to be executed. They were magnanimous to live and eat well before they died. But if she didn't know what was good for her and pushed her luck, Gu Nianji wouldn't show any mercy. She was the best at dealing with the prime minister. Bai Jini's arrogance was completely suppressed by the few words she said in front of the single cell. She was much more obedient in the following questions. From his professional perspective, Gu Nianji's previous complaint lacked a breakthrough point that could string all the accusations together. There was no doubt that Bai Jini's testimony had the best effect. He put away all the documents and smiled at Gu Nianji. As expected of the great lawyer Gu who won a case in Germany. The pleadings you prepared can be used as models. Don't worry, I'll hand it over and let the prosecutor weigh it carefully. Please go back and wait for further notice. Gu Nianji knew it was a success when he said that. She sighed softly and stood up with a smile. She bowed to the staff member and said, "Thank you for enforcing the law impartially. I hope we can work together happily from now on." Song Jining was the plaintiff, and Gu Nianji was her lawyer with full authority. If the procuratorate filed a public prosecution, Gu Nianji would likely be hired by the procuratorate as a public prosecution lawyer to go against the defendant's lawyer in court. The staff member also knew what she meant. He reached out and shook Gu Nianji's hand. "You're welcome, great lawyer Gu." After leaving the procuratorate, Gu Nianji looked at her watch. It was almost 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She had left the house at 7 in the morning and had only eaten 2 Zilong Bao for breakfast. However, she was excited and all the energy in her body was burning. She hadn't felt hungry at all. It was already past 2 o'clock when she drove back to Hua Xiaoheng's official residence. Only then did she realize that she was hungry. She tossed the car keys to the orderly and asked casually, "Is Major General Hua back?" Hua Xiaoheng hadn't come back last night. Gu Nianji knew that he was either in a meeting or on a mission, so she didn't ask. The orderly quickly said, "He's back. He's resting upstairs." Gu Nianji turned around and didn't plan to go upstairs. She would let Hua Xiaoheng have a good sleep. Gu Nianji walked into the kitchen and planned to make herself something to eat. She came back at a bad time. The orderly who cooked for Hua Xiaoheng wasn't at the official residence at this time. He must have gone to buy groceries. Moreover, even if he was here, Gu Nianji couldn't trouble him to specially cook for her. It was a privilege to ask him to cook before it was mealtime. Gu Nianji used to eat some snacks and wait until mealtime to eat with everyone. However, she didn't want to eat snacks today. She wanted to eat some hot food. She walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. She pretended to look around but found that there were no leftovers. She couldn't make egg fried rice even if she wanted to. Instant noodles were out of the question. Hua Xiaoheng's kitchen didn't allow that kind of unhealthy food to exist. However, there were frozen dumplings in the freezer compartment in the refrigerator. She could take them out and make fried dumplings. He said to the murderous members of the suicide squad and the demolition team outside, "It's fine, it's fine. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding." Before he could finish his sentence, he was knocked down by the captain of the suicide squad, Zhou Qiyuan. "We'll see for ourselves if it's a misunderstanding. Let's go." He gestured and rushed in with the suicide squad. According to the procedure, this was what they had to do. Because when the alarm sounded, they had to recognize no one but Hua Xiaoheng. A group of people rushed to the official residence with guns. When they saw thick smoke billowing from the kitchen, they immediately occupied all the advantageous corners of the living room. They set up their guns and covered Zhou Qiyuan and 2 other members as they rushed into the kitchen. Hua Xiaoheng was standing up from the ground with Gu Nianji in his arms. He looked up and saw a group of heavily armed suicide squad members standing in front of him with guns. The corners of Hua Xiaoheng's mouth twitched. Gu Nianji wanted to die. She buried her entire body in Hua Xiaoheng's arms and refused to raise her head. Zhou Qiyuan looked at Hua Xiaoheng and asked with concern, "Major General Hua, are you okay?" Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand helplessly. "I'm fine. It's really a misunderstanding. You take them out first. I'll be right out." Zhou Qiyuan refused. "You go out first. We still have to check this place carefully. It's better to be safe than sorry." Of course, Zhou Qiyuan didn't suspect Gu Nianji, but who knew if someone would use this opportunity to tamper with the house. At this time, the importance of procedures was obvious. Everything was done according to the rules. Even if there was nothing, they had to treat it as if there was something wrong and treat it as a drill. A real combat drill, although the cause was very nonsensical. Hua Xiaoheng had no choice but to carry Gu Nianji and quickly walk out of the kitchen. The kitchen behind him was still emitting thick black smoke. When he walked out of the thick smoke, it was as if he had walked out of a smoke-filled battlefield. The other Suicide Squad members and the demolition team in the living room breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Hua Xiaoheng come out, but they still didn't dare to be careless. After all, Zhou Qiyuan hadn't spoken yet. They still had to maintain their combat status. 5 minutes later, Zhou Qiyuan came out of the kitchen and used his Bluetooth headset to inform everyone. Clear. That was what the alarm meant. Gu Nianji had been sitting in Hua Xiaoheng's arms and clinging to him like a koala. When she heard Zhou Qiyuan say that it was fine, she was about to let go when she heard laughter from the living room. The Suicide Squad members and the demolition team members came out from all corners of the living room and clicked their tongues at Gu Nianji, who was in Hua Xiaoheng's arms. Little Nianji, you're really different now. You're going to be the wife of a major general, and you dare to set Major General Hua's kitchen on fire. We didn't even help you with the wall. This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1306, I'll help you. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. There are 2 updates today. When the monthly votes reach 2,100, we'll do 3 updates. At 8 o'clock p.m. the second update. P.S. Thank you, Leader Enigma Yangxi, for your 10,000 Qidian coins yesterday. Mwah. Chapter 1317. Gu Nianji wanted to find a hole to hide in. But the more she tried to hide, the more they laughed. They were all people who watched her grow up, so it wasn't a problem for them to joke around. However, Gu Nianji was so embarrassed this time that she couldn't take it anymore. She was so angry that she turned to the people who were laughing at her and said loudly, "That's enough. Laugh again and kill yourself." Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they all laughed even more happily. Ha! Have you ever heard of such a powerful threat? No. She's going to commit suicide if we keep laughing? Sister, you're amazing. Ah, I'm so scared. Ah. A few of them even fell to the ground laughing, rolling on the ground with their arms around their stomachs. Hua Xiaoheng, who never smiled in front of his subordinates, also smirked. However, seeing that Gu Nianji was extremely embarrassed, he pressed her head against his chest and coolly glanced at the people around him. Wherever his eyes passed, the laughter came to an abrupt halt. All of them stood ramrod straight in front of Hua Xiaoheng, looking up at the sky with tense expressions. Hua Xiaoheng stood up with Gu Nianji in his arms and said dryly, "Today's operation was a good one. You can all disperse." "Yes, Chief." Everyone answered in unison. "Everyone, turn right. Run. Let's go." Zhou Qiyuan commanded the temporary response team and ran out of Hua Xiaoheng's official residence. The thick smoke in the kitchen gradually dissipated, and the engineers came in with tools to renovate the kitchen, from the renovation to the wiring. The gendarmerie were working on the side. Another group of engineers set up a makeshift kitchen in an empty room. Hua Xiaoheng's 2 orderlies, who were in charge of cooking, came in from outside with pale faces. They stood in front of the kitchen door in a daze, not knowing what had happened. "Comrade, what's going on? We just went out to buy some groceries. Why did he burn it in the kitchen after coming back?" Just now, when they heard the alarm going off in the entire station, they thought that something had happened, so they hid on the spot according to the procedure. They even hid a bag of live prawns in the pool behind the big rock. When the alarm was lifted and they returned to the entrance of Hua Xiaoheng's official residence, they found out that something had happened to Hua Xiaoheng's official residence. "Ah, how can you go grocery shopping together?" The comrades of the military police and the military engineers were laughing at the 2 of them. "You have a major general's wife whose cooking skills are comparable to that of a killer. You must remember not to leave the kitchen at the same time. You must stagger." Ah. After repeating this a few times, the 2 orderlies finally figured out the whole thing. The 2 of them rushed to the kitchen to take a look and open the refrigerator. They found that the dumplings they had made a few days ago were a little less. When they looked at the ruins on the gas stove, they completely understood. "Miss Gu wants to eat fried dumplings?" "Most likely. Look at the burnt pan." Then I added oil, water, turned on the fire. It's been burning without a lid, so it must be burnt. In the end, the water vapor mixed with the oil came out of the pan. There was an open flame on the gas stove, so when the flame met the oil, the water vapor was nothing. Then there will definitely be black smoke and the smoke alarm will go off. The 2 orderlies finally understood. They looked at the utensils in the kitchen and deduced what had happened, and they actually guessed it correctly. After coming out of the messy kitchen, the 2 orderlies returned to the makeshift kitchen next to them. They used the remaining dumplings to make 2 plates of fried dumplings and put them in a thermos bucket for Gu Nianji. Gu Nianji was lying on the bed with her head covered with the blanket. She wouldn't come out no matter how hard Hua Xiaoheng called her. "Nianji, they were just joking with you. They didn't mean any harm." Hua Xiaoheng patted her through the blanket. Be good. Get up and go eat something. He knew that she must have been starving to think of cooking for herself. Otherwise she wouldn't have gone to the kitchen. I'm not eating. I'll kill myself if I say another word. Gu Nianji pounded the bed with her hand. She was in so much pain that she wanted to die. You're going to kill yourself after saying a few words? Can you bear to leave me? Hua Xiaoheng simply picked Gu Nianji up with the blanket. Hurry up and go eat. What do you want to eat? I'll make it for you. Why don't we go out to eat? We have to go to the airport to pick someone up after eating. Gu Nianji fiddled with Hua Xiaoheng's Adam's apple with her hand. She pouted so much that she could hang an oil bottle. She said angrily, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just staying here for the rest of my life. I want to be a mushroom. I want to live here and grow here. Yes, just be a mushroom. Give birth to little mushrooms for me in the future. Hua Xiaoheng couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her pouting lips as he spoke. Her soft lips were as beautiful as he remembered them. One kiss wasn't enough. He took it in his mouth and savored it carefully. The kiss made Gu Nianji dizzy. She almost fainted. Fortunately, the orderly's voice came from the door. Hua Xiaoheng let go of Gu Nianji reluctantly. What is it? Hua Xiaoheng asked expressionlessly into the intercom. Reporting to the chief. We made pan-fried dumplings. Is Miss Gu hungry? The orderly at the door scratched his head. We left them at the door. If you're hungry, come out and get them. The two of them placed the thermos containing the pan-fried dumplings at the door of Gu Nianji's bedroom. Gu Nianji held onto Hua Xiaoheng tightly and didn't allow him to open the door. Although she was indeed very hungry compared to embarrassing herself in front of others, she decided to starve. However, the two orderlies were very perceptive. They actually came up with such a trick. Hua Xiaoheng silently praised the two sensible orderlies in his heart. He planned to give them a few more days off during the new year. After all, he planned to take Gu Nianji to the Xie family in France for the new year this year. Alright, they've already left. I'll go bring in the pan-fried dumplings. Hua Xiaoheng carried Gu Nianji with the blanket and placed her on the sofa. You should eat some. Your stomach doesn't feel well when you're hungry. Have you forgotten? Gu Nianji's stomach was actually starting to ache. She didn't stop him anymore. She watched as Hua Xiaoheng walked to the door and opened it. She quickly lay down on the sofa, afraid that someone would see her at the door. After a while, when she heard that there was no other sound at the door, she carefully poked her head out from behind the sofa to secretly observe. Hua Xiaoheng turned around and closed the door with the food box. He looked up and saw a small black head swaying behind the sofa. This little girl thought she was hiding well. If she had the ability, she would hide her head too. Hua Xiaoheng shook his head and walked behind the sofa. He held Gu Nianji's head. Stop hiding. I can see your head from afar. Seeing that the door was closed, Gu Nianji sat up with the blanket in her arms and narrowed her eyes to look over. However, her gaze had always been attracted by Hua Xiaoheng in the past, but today it was attracted by the food box in his hand. Her burning gaze was fixed on the food box in Hua Xiaoheng's hand, and Gu Nianji felt even hungrier. Hua Xiaoheng didn't tease her anymore. He went to the cupboard in the living room and took out a black porcelain plate with epiphyllum on it. He put the fried dumplings on it and put a small silver fork on it. Eat it. It's your favorite san xian filling with shrimp. The san xian dumplings had a vegetarian san xian filling with eggs, chives, and diced mushrooms. There were also san xian dumplings with eggs, chives, and pork or eggs, diced mushrooms, and shrimp. Sometimes there was a little vermicelli. Gu Nianji loved san xian dumplings with eggs, mushrooms, shrimp, and vermicelli the most. This time it happened to be her favorite flavor, so she ate very happily. After eating, the frustration and anger she felt just now actually disappeared without a trace. As expected, food was the most important thing to the people. Any kind of depression could be solved with a delicious meal. Thinking back to what had just happened, she giggled. Hua Xiaoheng patted her head. Go take a shower after eating, and then I'll take you to the airport to pick someone up. Oh, do you want our Major General Hua to pick them up personally? A foreign head of state? Gu Nianji asked him with a smile. Can I not go? No. Hua Xiaoheng denied it flatly. It's my great-uncle, who is also my grandmother's brother. Gu Nianji exclaimed and immediately went to the bathroom in the bedroom to wash up and take a bath. She cleaned up for a full hour and a half before coming out. Hua Xiaoheng looked at his watch. Just in time. Let's go now. Gu Nianji was wearing Chanel's latest summer tulip skirt with a matching silk round-neck three-quarter sleeve top. Her long hair was pulled back and pinned on top of her head with a diamond hairband. Hua Xiaoheng looked at her and nodded. Let's go. The two of them got into the car and sped towards Imperial Capital International Airport's T3 terminal. Grandfather Xia's private plane landed at the airport an hour later. This time he came back quietly and didn't greet any of the other parties. Wu Xiaoheng was the only one who knew he was back. The two of them stood on the tarmac and watched the cabin door of a large Boeing 787 passenger plane open. A hale and hearty old man with an elegant and powerful aura walked down the gangway. Gu Nianji looked at the old man's every move and couldn't help whispering to Wu Xiaoheng. "This is your great-uncle? He's so imposing, like an emperor." Wu Xiaoheng. This was the second update of the day, Chapter 1307, Growing Mushrooms, Growing Mushrooms. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. 2 updates today, and the monthly votes will be 2,100 tomorrow. We'll do 3 updates. Good night, dear ones. Chapter 1318. The Imperial Capital International Airport was still very busy in the evening. The plane took off and landed with flashing red lights. The command tower was brightly lit, and everyone was working nervously. Gu Nianji and Wu Xiaoheng stood on the walkway of the tarmac and watched the hale and hearty old man walk down under the lights. 2 tall men in black uniforms followed closely behind him. They carried briefcases and wore sunglasses. They looked like secretaries and bodyguards at the same time. Wu Xiaoheng brought Gu Nianji to greet them. "Granduncle, did everything go smoothly?" Wu Xiaoheng reached out his hand and spoke in a very friendly voice. This kind of friendliness was different from the friendliness he had with General Ji and Speaker Long. It was a familiarity that came from the same bloodline. The old man was Xie Xinxing, the head of the Xie family. Although he was no longer in charge, his influence was still there. He nodded and said gently, "It was fine. Xiaoheng, is this your fiancé?" He looked at Gu Nianji, who was standing next to Wu Xiaoheng. He had seen Gu Nianji's photos and videos many times, but this was the first time he had seen her in person. To be honest, Xie Xinxing felt that the photos and videos didn't reflect her true appearance. Although she was also beautiful and cute in the photos and videos, she was still far from being as lively as she was in person. Xie Xinxing had originally been quite critical of Gu Nianji and Wu Xiaoheng's relationship. However, Wu Xiaoheng insisted, so he didn't object. Now that he saw Gu Nianji in person, he finally understood. With such a girl chasing after him so closely, even the strong-willed Wu Xiaoheng couldn't remain indifferent. Wu Xiaoheng quickly introduced them. "Granduncle, this is Nianji." He then said to Gu Nianji, "This is my granduncle, my grandmother's biological brother." Gu Nianji knew that Wu Xiaoheng's grandmother, Xie Zian, was the eldest daughter of the Xie family, so she quickly said, "Hello, Mr. Xie." "You're still calling me Mr. Xie?" Xie Xinxing put his hands behind his back with a half-smile. "Since you're treating me like an outsider, I won't give you the gift." Gu Nianji blinked and realized that this old man was very interesting. She readily accepted his advice and said sweetly, "Hello, granduncle." "Good girl." Xie Xinxing smiled and reached out his arm to her. "Are you free soon? This old man has just arrived here and is not familiar with the people and the place. Would you like to be my guide and accompany me for a few days?" Wu Xiaoheng and the 2 black uniformed staff behind him smirked at the same time. It was his first time here and he was unfamiliar with this place. How could he say that at his age? The name Xie Xinxing could do whatever he wanted wherever he went. In the imperial capital, it was not impossible to make the imperial capital tremble 3 times with every stomp, but at least it was possible to make it tremble once. Gu Nianji knew that the Xie family was very powerful, but that was outside the country. This was because the Xie family had moved overseas more than 100 years ago. She didn't know if the Xie family's name was still useful in the country. So she helped Xie Xinxing up and immediately said, "No problem. As long as I'm free, I'll definitely accompany you. Just don't think I'm too talkative." No. I like girls who can talk. Xie Xinxing praised her with a smile. "But you said that you'll only accompany me when you're free, so will you be free?" Well, this old man's thinking was quite meticulous. Gu Nianji deliberated and said, "I'm on vacation recently, so I'm not busy. However, I'm helping someone with a lawsuit. If the court is in session soon, I'm afraid I won't have that much time to accompany you. However, as long as I'm free." Before Gu Nianji could finish, Xie Xinxing interrupted her and said with a smile, "Lawsuit? Sure, I love watching lawsuits. When I was in France, I loved watching court documentaries on TV." Gu Nianji, Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said from the side, "Our Nianji is a famous lawyer. She's fought many lawsuits and has never lost." His voice was light, but the boastfulness in his tone was almost breaking through the sky. Gu Nianji wanted to appear nonchalant, but she was extremely happy inside. She couldn't suppress the joy no matter what. She turned around with a smile and said to Hua Xiaoheng, "Major General Hua, I've only fought a few lawsuits and you're already raising flags for me. If I lose this time, it'll be all your fault." Hey. Can you two stop flirting in front of an old man like me? Old people also have dignity. I refuse this bowl of dog food." Xie Xinxing pretended to be serious, but his eyes flashed with humor. Gu Nianji saw that the old man wasn't pedantic at all, and even used the trendy internet term dog food without missing a beat. She felt even more close to him. "Granduncle, where are you staying this time?" Hua Xiaoheng smiled faintly and led them to the parking lot. The chauffeur arranged by the Xie family was waiting in the parking lot. Xie Xinxing thought about it. "I'll stay at the West Mountain Villa. The scenery there is good and it's quiet. I'm used to the peace abroad." Okay. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything and agreed immediately. The West Mountain Villa again. The Xie family was really impressive. Gu Nianji didn't say anything else and followed them into the custom-made Rolls-Royce Phantom. The car started smoothly and she couldn't feel any bumps at all. The noise outside the car was cut off, and it was extremely quiet inside. Xie Xinxing took a sip of water and sighed. "I haven't been back in more than 10 years. The last time I came back was for your grandmother's funeral." Gu Nianji didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She pricked up her ears to listen to old Master Xie talk about the past. This was all about the Hua family's history. Hua Xiaoheng rarely talked about these family matters, so Gu Nianji naturally had no way of knowing. Hua Xiaoheng grunted softly. "I'm relieved that you're taking care of my grandmother in France. Your grandmother was buried in the Xie family cemetery in France. In all these years, only you, your father and mother have gone to pay your respects." Xie Xinxing's expression darkened. Someone has been living a carefree life for so many years that he's forgotten how heavy his bones are. "The main reason I came back this time was to help someone straighten his bones, and the secondary reason was to accompany little Nianji on a sightseeing tour." Gu Nianji was speechless. How did it become a sightseeing tour with her? Since when did she want to go sightseeing? Right? Little Nianji? Xie Xinxing turned to see Gu Nianji and immediately laughed again. Gu Nianji glanced at Hua Xiaoheng. Seeing that he didn't comment, she smiled and said, "Granduncle is too funny. I should be the one accompanying you on a sightseeing tour. How could I dare ask you to accompany me? That would be too unfilial." Ha, it's okay. I like to deal with young people. Don't think that I'm old-fashioned. I also often chat and fight with people online. I even claim to be a cute 17-year-old girl. Gu Nianji burst out laughing. She clapped and said, "That's amazing. I usually call myself an old man in his 30s. Hua Xiaoheng and the two black uniformed staff looked away expressionlessly at the street scene that flashed by outside the car window. 30-year-old men. The three old men, who were about to turn 30, instantly felt as if they had suffered a critical hit of 100,000 points. Xie Xinxing and Gu Nianji finally hit it off at first sight. They had an interesting exchange of opinions about disguising their identities online. When he found out that Gu Nianji's computer skills were not bad and she could even be a hacker, Xie Xinxing's gaze was filled with admiration. "Little Nianji is so amazing. I'll be under your protection from now on." Xie Xinxing excitedly took out his phone. "What's your phone number? Add me on WeChat." Gu Nianji, however, she still obediently took out her phone and exchanged phone numbers with Grandfather Xie. Then she clicked accept and became Grandfather Xie's WeChat friend. The heroic Grandfather Xie immediately transferred 100,000 yuan to Gu Nianji's WeChat and said, It's a greeting gift for little Nianji. Gu Nianji saw the number and almost couldn't count the zeros behind it. Major General Hua. Gu Nianji saw that the phone was handed to Hua Xiaoheng and asked timidly, "Grandfather gave it to me." She didn't dare accept such a large amount. Hua Xiaoheng smiled and nodded. "It's a greeting gift from granduncle. Accept it." This is just the appetizer. The later dishes would be even more extravagant. Xie Xinxing pretended to be angry. "What's wrong? It's a greeting gift from me. What does it have to do with this kid? You still want him to nod?" "Little Nianji, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you can't spoil men. If you spoil them, they'll turn the world upside down." "Gu Nianji, then what should I do?" Gu Nianji spread her hands and said with a smile, "Granduncle, can you share some of your experience with me?" "It's very simple. You have to fight. If you don't fight for 3 days, you'll tear the roof tiles off. You have to be strict with men. When your grandmother was young, I always told her not to be too virtuous and not to treat men too seriously. Men are all cheap." "Look, she doesn't listen to me." Xie Xinxing was full of complaints when he thought about Xie Zian and Hua Xuanon. "I'm a man. Do you think I don't know what men are like?" After saying that, he proudly puffed out his chest. "My wife is different. She has always been strict with me. That's why I'm righteous and stable. My career and life are both fruitful." Gu Nianji suddenly felt that Grandfather Xie was quite cute like this. Imagining the chaotic marriage life between him and his wife, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. "What are you laughing at? You don't believe me?" Grandfather Xie laughed as well. However, after laughing for a while, he said lightly, "Young couples are companions when they're old. My wife and I have argued for our entire lives. I used to think that she was a little annoying, but she left alone first. Only then did I realize that it was already an extravagant hope for her to bother me again, hit me again, and scold me again." Gu Nianji couldn't stand this kind of invisible dog food the most. It was simply fatal. She turned her head to look at Hua Xiaoheng, only to see that Hua Xiaoheng was looking back at her. In the dim car, their bright eyes shone brightly, intertwining with a rhythm that outsiders couldn't understand. Xie Xinxing was infected by the tacit understanding and deep affection between the two fiancés, and he also fell into his own memories. The car was silent for a moment. The driver and the 2 staff members in front didn't even dare to breathe. After a while, Xie Xinxing snapped out of his memories. He turned around and saw that Gu Nianji and Hua Xiaoheng's eyes were almost glued to each other. He chuckled and asked, "Xiaoheng, it's too late today. Let's go to your grandfather and father's place for the night first. We'll go to the West Mountain Villa tomorrow. Will we make it?" "Of course not." Hua Xiaoheng quickly sent the address of the military headquarters compound to the driver in front. "Please drive to this address." The Xie family's driver and staff were used to Grandfather Xie's whims. They skillfully changed their work itinerary, notified all the support personnel, and changed their route to the military headquarters compound. Gu Nianji was a little uneasy. "Major General Hua, do I have to go too?" "Yes, stay at my house for the night today." Hua Xiaoheng patted her hand. "That's your home. Don't feel pressured." "Umph. Who dares to pressure little Nianji?" Xie Xinxing patted Gu Nianji's other hand. "I'm here to support you today. From now on, you'll be under my protection. If anyone in the Hua family wants to make things difficult for you, they'll have to ask me first." This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1308, You Protect Me, I'll Protect You. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommendation tickets. Today was the 3rd update. The monthly ticket was 2,100 plus updates at 1 p.m., and the 3rd update was at 8 p.m. P.S. Thank you to the administrators in the group for recording a birthday congratulatory video for me. What a surprise. Mwah. Chapter 1319. It was like a great backer that had flown in from the heavens. Gu Nianji's jet-black eyes suddenly lit up. "Granduncle, are you serious? Please don't be courteous with me, I will take it seriously." Xie Xinxing laughed. "I'm already so old. Do I have to brag in front of a little girl like you?" Furthermore, it was not a big deal. If he couldn't even support a little girl, then he didn't deserve to be the head of the Xie family. Hua Xiaoheng also said, "Granduncle either doesn't say anything or as long as he says it, he'll keep his word. Don't worry." Gu Nianji nodded repeatedly and smiled at Xie Xinxing. "Granduncle, I'll remember that." The group chatted and laughed as they soon arrived at the military headquarters. General Ji and the others received the news as soon as Xie Xinxing's Rolls-Royce Phantom limousine drove through the gate. "Xiaoheng, has old Master Xie returned to the country?" General Ji personally called Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng nodded. I've just been picked up from the airport. Granduncle wants to stay at my house for a night in the military compound. That's great. General Ji smiled. I'll visit your house right away. Is that convenient? Hua Xiaoheng thought for a moment and said, I'm afraid our family has some private matters to deal with today. When Granduncle returns to the West Mountain Villa tomorrow, I'll invite you and Speaker Long to have tea together. When Gu Nianji heard that Hua Xiaoheng had decided to treat them on his own, she quickly signaled to Hua Xiaoheng to ask Grandfather Xie first. Hua Xiaoheng saw the look in her eyes and touched her head with his hand. He hung up the phone and said to Xie Xinxing, Granduncle, General Ji and Speaker Long want to visit you. I'll postpone it until tomorrow. I'll go to your villa in the West Mountain and invite them for tea. What do you think? Is it appropriate? Xie Xinxing waved his hand nonchalantly. You can make the decision. I don't have the patience to care about these things. The main purpose of his return to the country was to support Hua Xiaoheng and Gu Nianji, as well as to teach Hua Xuanong a lesson. As for other matters, he would meet them if he could handle it. If he couldn't, he would just decline. Xie Xinxing didn't need to be polite in front of General Ji and Speaker Long. The car drove into the Hua family's driveway in the military headquarters compound and stopped under the ginkgo tree in front of the door. Hua Xiaoheng got out of the car first, walked to the other side and opened the door for Xie Xinxing. Xie Xinxing got out of the car and looked up at the Hua family mansion. Back then he had personally sent off the only eldest daughter of the Xie family to get married. Later on he had personally brought the only eldest daughter of the Xie family back. He was very familiar with this mansion. Gu Nianji got out of the car and stood beside Hua Xiaoheng with a serious expression. Xie Xinxing glanced at her and extended his arm to her again. He smiled and said, Little Nianji, help me in. Gu Nianji walked over and held Xie Xinxing's arm as they walked in. The guards at the entrance of the Hua manor saw that it was Hua Xiaoheng and didn't stop him. They even saluted and greeted him. Hua Xiaoheng raised his hand. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone passed through the iron gate and walked towards a small building with about 10 rooms. At this time, the sky was completely dark, and the LED umbrella-shaped street lamps that were half the height of a person gently illuminated the path under the army's feet. Hua Xiaoheng let Gu Nianji and Xie Xinxing walk in front, while he followed behind them alone. The two black uniformed staff carrying briefcases walked behind Hua Xiaoheng. The living room on the first floor of the Hua family mansion was brightly lit. Hua Xuanong sat in front of the sofa, leaning on his cane. He smiled as he watched Luo Jialan bring him a bowl of dessert. Hua Guanchen frowned and sat on the sofa opposite Hua Xuanong. He said, Why are you here again? Didn't you move away? Luo Jialan looked at Hua Xuanong in embarrassment and slowly lowered her head. She said softly, Uncle Hua, I'm just worried about the old man's health. Hua Xuanong had been getting along very well with Luo Jialan for the past 2 years. Although Luo Jialan was very young, she was very good at taking care of people. Hua Xuanong had a very good time with her. Therefore, after Luo Jialan moved out, she still came to the Hua family to see Hua Xuanong again and again under the guise of visiting Hua Xuanong. Hua Xuanong raised his eyelids and rolled his eyes at Hua Guanchen. Go back to your room. Jialan cares about me. What does it have to do with you? A person who ate, lived, and used their house had run back after being chased out by him, and now she actually said, What does it have to do with me? Hua Guanchen really felt that he had *ket up. He stood up, a little annoyed. He had already told the guards at the entrance of the courtyard not to let Luo Jialan in again. In the end, as soon as Hua Xuanong appeared, the guards no longer stopped Luo Jialan. Hua Guanchen had been working overtime every day these days, so he didn't feel that there was a problem. Today he occasionally came back early, but found that Luo Jialan was coming in and out of their house again. Father, don't you remember what I said last time? Hua Guanchen's tone was very cold. You said so many things. How would I know which one it was? Hua Xuanong was confused by him, indicating that he didn't remember. Okay, then I'll say it again. Hua Guanchen crossed his arms and was about to speak when a group of people walked in from the entrance of the living room. The two people in front were Gu Nianji and Xie Xinxing. Luo Jialan had been sitting next to Hua Xuanong with her head down. When she heard the sound of the door, she quickly looked up. With just one glance, she was stunned. The old man standing next to Gu Nianji looked so familiar. Wasn't he the head of the Xie family, Xie Xinxing, whom she had once seen from afar? She had been in the Xie family in Europe for more than a year, but she hadn't spoken to Xie Xinxing even once. She hadn't expected Gu Nianji to stand so intimately with the head of the Xie family. She was indeed a shameless *tc. Luo Jialan secretly cursed Gu Nianji for being a slut. She wouldn't even let such an old man off. Gu Nianji stood next to Xie Xinxing as obedient as a quail. She looked completely at a loss for what to do. Xie Xinxing patted the back of her hand. Don't worry, it's fine. Luo Jialan was already smiling and running over with a beaming face. Grandfather Xie is here. It's an honor to have you here. Xie Xinxing looked at her seriously and said, Are you a doctor or a nurse of the Hua family? Luo Jialan was stunned. Don't you remember me? I asked you if you're a doctor or a nurse of the Hua family. Don't you understand Chinese? Xie Xinxing said expressionlessly, but his tone was very heavy. Gu Nianji couldn't help but cower under the faint pressure. Needless to say, Luo Jialan was in a direct confrontation with Xie Xinxing. She was so scared that she was about to vomit. No, I'm neither a doctor nor a nurse of the Hua family. Luo Jialan stammered. Why didn't you inform me that you were here? We'll pick you up at the airport. You're neither a doctor nor a nurse. What are you doing at the Hua family's house in the middle of the night? Xie Xinxing refused to let her go. Are you a member of the Hua family? Luo Jialan. I used to be, but not anymore. But I grew up here and lived here for more than 20 years. This is like my home. Living here for a long time makes it your home? Even the children of my family wouldn't dare say that. Xie Xinxing snorted and led Gu Nianji around Luo Jialan to the center of the living room. When He Xuanong and He Guanchen saw that it was Xie Xinxing, they stood up in shock and were speechless. This was the second update of the day. The monthly ticket of 2,100 plus updates had arrived. Chapter 1309, It's My Home, Don't Stand on Ceremony. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommended tickets. It was the third update at 8 p.m. Moi. Chapter 1320. He Xuanong and Luo Jialan had been in Europe for more than a year, but Xie Xinxing hadn't visited them even once. At first, they thought that Xie Xinxing was too busy. After all, he was the head of the Xie family. How many things needed his approval every day? In the end, they found out later that Xie Xinxing was no longer in charge of the family affairs. Most of the family affairs had been handed over to his son to take care of. Only then did they know his attitude towards these two people. The two of them stayed in one of the Xie family's courtyards, not daring to cause any trouble. After returning from Europe, Xie Xinxing didn't send them off. He Xuanong didn't dare to see Xie Xinxing because of his wife, so Xie Xinxing didn't want to see them in Europe. He was actually relieved deep down in his heart, but it didn't look good on his face. If Gu Nianji hadn't helped Song Jining and Luo Xinxue in the lawsuit and implicated Zhang Feng, the Xies wouldn't have known about it and wouldn't have treated him so coldly. Thinking of this, He Xuanong's gaze toward Gu Nianji became even more sinister. Don't you think about whether you're worthy of hugging this thigh? Did she think that the Hua family would obediently marry her just because she was connected to the Xie family? This is China, not France. This was more than 100 years later, not more than 100 years ago. He Xuanong straightened his slightly hunched back. It's being cautious, right? I haven't seen you for many years, but you're still as strong as ever, ha. He Xuanong smiled as he walked towards Xie Xinxing. He Guanchen glared at He Xiaoheng and stepped forward. Why didn't you inform us earlier that you were coming? Xie Xinxing was still kind to He Guanchen. After all, he was his nephew and he had watched him grow up. His expression cleared up a little and he nodded. I told Xiaoheng not to make a big fuss. I'm returning to China to deal with some personal matters. He Guanchen smiled and said, He's just being immature. Even if it's a private matter, it's still a matter of national importance. How can he just not say it? Xiaoheng, you should review this matter with the organization. You don't know what's important and you don't know who's close to you. How is that how you do things? He Xiaoheng smiled and didn't say anything. Xie Xinxing couldn't take it anymore. He said angrily, What's wrong? Now that I'm not in my position, no one listens to my words? Haha, if Xiaoheng is punished by your organization because he listened to me, it seems like you don't want me to return to China at all. No. I said the wrong thing. Please don't be angry. Cold sweat broke out on He Guanchen's forehead as he quickly apologized to Xie Xinxing. Xie Xinxing suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a straight face, All right, we're all one family here. There's no need to be so formal. He led Gu Nianji to the group sofa in the middle of the living room and sat down. Luo Jialan clenched her fists tightly, unable to hide the jealousy and hatred in her eyes. She wanted to say that Gu Nianji wasn't a member of the Hua family, so why was she allowed to stay here? Even if they were engaged, they weren't legally married. Her surname wasn't Hua. Of course, she knew that picking on Gu Nianji at this time would only make Hua Xiaoheng and Xie Xinxing dislike her even more. Luo Jialan took a deep breath and retreated in order to advance. Grandfather Hua, Uncle Hua, old Mr. Xie, take your time. I'll leave first. Xie Xinxing raised his eyes and glanced at her. He said coldly, "Did I say you could leave?" Luo Jialan's body stiffened and she looked at Hua Xuanong helplessly. Hua Xuanong quickly helped her out. Jialan is here to take care of me. Ever since I retired, no one really cared about me. Only Jialan remembered me and chatted with me like my granddaughter-in-law. He then gave Gu Nianji a provocative look. Gu Nianji knew that Hua Xuanong didn't like her and wanted Luo Jialan to be Hua Xiaoheng's wife. She was mentally prepared, but when he said it out loud in front of so many people, she still felt her face burning and embarrassed. Luo Jialan's expression didn't change. She quickly lowered her eyes and said with a smile, "You flatter me, Grandfather Hua." She then said to Gu Nianji, "Grandfather Hua was just joking. You won't be angry, will you? If you get angry over something like this, how will you live in the future? Don't think that you can sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor just because you married into the Hua family. There are many ways to teach her a lesson." Hua Xiaoheng frowned and didn't say anything. He only put one hand on Gu Nianji's shoulder and kissed her forehead comfortingly. Luo Jialan caught a glimpse of this scene from the corner of her eye. Her dignified and magnanimous expression could no longer be maintained, and a crack appeared on her face. They were so intimate. He didn't even try to avoid suspicion. She was still standing here. How dare he kiss another woman? And when his grandfather said that he wanted to treat her, Luo Jialan, as his granddaughter-in-law, he actually kissed another woman. How much did he not put her in his eyes? Luo Jialan was so angry that her entire body trembled. The resentment in her eyes stabbed at Gu Nianji like throwing knives. Gu Nianji buried her head in Hua Xiaoheng's arms and ignored her. Xie Xinxing took a step forward and stood in front of Gu Nianji. He looked at Luo Jialan, then at Hua Xuanong and suddenly chuckled. He looked up at Hua Guanchen and said, "Guanchen, ever since your mother passed away, your family has become more and more unruly. Whose proper daughter-in-law and granddaughter-in-law hang out with their father-in-law and grandfather every day. You guys aren't ashamed, but I'm ashamed for you." These words were too harsh and Luo Jialan was very anxious. If she couldn't even come to the Hua family and lose Hua Xuanong's powerful support, what else did she have? When Hua Xuanong heard this, his face turned as red as a piece of red cloth. "Xinxing, you're my uncle. I won't lower myself to your level. Aren't you afraid that Xian won't be able to rest in peace in the afterlife by saying such words? You still dare to mention Xian? If it weren't for the fact that you couldn't control yourself, would she have been so angry with you?" Xie Xinxing strode up to Hua Xuanong and raised his hand to slap him. When Hua Xuanong was in Europe, Xie Xinxing had been stopped by his son and had swallowed his anger. However, this time, because he had investigated the trust fund under Luo Jialan's name, he had found out some other information. Even Xie Xinxing's gentle and elegant son couldn't take it anymore, so he let him return to China to settle the score with Hua Xuanong. Xie Xinxing was too strong. This time he had accumulated so much anger for so many years. He mercilessly hit Hua Xuanong until he saw stars. If it weren't for the fact that he was on crutches, he would have been slapped to the ground by Xie Xinxing. "How dare you hit me? It's illegal to hit someone." Hua Xuanong was so angry that he couldn't even speak properly. He covered the side of his face that had been slapped and looked at Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng. "Are you just going to watch your father and grandfather get beaten up like this by an outsider and do nothing?" "Outsider? Today I'll show you what it means to be an outsider and an insider." Xie Xinxing pointed at Hua Xuanong angrily. "I'm Xian's biological brother. Seeing your uncle is like seeing your mother, do you understand? I represent Xian and you say I'm an outsider. Do you not treat Xian as your wife? Fine, even though she's already dead, I can still get her to divorce you. Do you believe me?" Hua Xuanong's entire body trembled. He couldn't afford to lose face like this. His eyes darkened and he pursed his lips. "You're really crazy. She's already dead and you're still making a scene like this. Aren't you afraid that Xian will be disappointed? Who told her to be disappointed? Don't you know that?" Xie Xinxing put his hands behind his back and took a deep breath. "In that case, there's no need to say anything else today. I came here to stay for the night, but with your attitude I'll leave right away." Luo Jialan was delighted. She wanted to quietly move closer to Hua Xuanong, but after what Xie Xinxing had said just now, she was too embarrassed to get too close to Hua Xuanong. Just as she was hesitating, Xie Xinxing added, "Then let's make a long story short. I came here specially to tell you that our Xie family is very satisfied with Nianji as our granddaughter-in-law. I'm here to add to her dowry. She doesn't have a family, so our Xie family will be her family from now on. Whoever makes things difficult for her will make things difficult for our Xie family. Hui Xuanong's lips parted and he trembled for a long time. In the end, he didn't dare to confront Xie Xinxing directly. Finally, he raised his hand dejectedly and said weakly, "Since you've said that, what else do I have to say? Anyway, I've never cared about the affairs of the younger generation. As long as you guys are happy." With that, he turned around and was about to go upstairs with his walking stick. Wu Xiaoheng finally stopped him. "Grandfather, I want to ask about Uncle's will. Can you hand it over?" Hui Xuanong suddenly stopped in his tracks and his expression changed. Fortunately, his back was facing the crowd, so they couldn't see his expression. Hui Xuanong breathed a sigh of relief and quickly thought about how to respond. Luo Jialan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She staggered back a few steps and leaned against the mahogany vase support behind her. She stammered, "Will? Does my father have a will?" This was today's third update, Chapter 1310 The Outsider. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Good night, dear ones. Chapter 1321. Wu Xuanong slowly turned around. He had already made up his mind. "Will? What will?" His face showed a bewildered expression. "You mean Guan Yuan?" Tears fell from his eyes. If my Guan Yuan was still alive, how could he let outsiders bully his old father? Wu Xuanong stared at Hu Guanchen angrily. "I can't control your son, but you're my son. How could you just watch someone humiliate me like this?" Hu Guanchen frowned. "Dad, what are you talking about? Who bullied you?" He was saying that he wished he was the one who died, right? He would never be able to compare to his brother. Hu Guanchen felt extremely uncomfortable. He lowered his head and looked away. Hui Xuanong pointed at Xie Xinxing and said angrily, "He slapped me in front of you just now, and you still say he didn't humiliate me? Will you only be happy if someone beats me to death?" Hu Guanchen shook his head helplessly and said, "How can Uncle be an outsider? Wouldn't you make Mother feel disappointed in the afterlife by saying that? Both of you are our elders. Please calm down, calm down." As he spoke, he walked to Xie Xinxing's side and quietly held his arm. He squeezed Gu Nianji to the side. "You must be very tired after coming from afar. Let me take you to the guest room to rest." He turned a deaf ear to Hui Xiaoheng's questioning of Hui Xuanong and didn't intend to respond at all. In his opinion, if he wanted to ask about the will, he could ask about it at any other time. It was indeed a little too much to ask about it on the day of Xie Xinxing's visit. Although Hui Xuanong wasn't a good father and Hu Guanchen was very disappointed in him, he wouldn't embarrass Hui Xuanong in front of the younger generation. Hu Guanchen couldn't stop Xie Xinxing from slapping Hui Xuanong because both of them were his elders. Moreover, Xie Xinxing represented his mother, Xie Zian's family, so he did have a reason to slap Hui Xuanong, so he didn't stop him. However, Hui Xiaoheng was rude, so Hu Guanchen couldn't sit idly by. Xie Xinxing didn't buy Hu Guanchen's words. He raised his head and looked at Hui Xuanong. He said in a low voice, "Yes, where's Guan Yuan's will? Xiaoheng asked you for it. It should be with you, right?" Hui Xuanong could tell that Hu Guanchen was still biased towards him, so he felt slightly better. At the end of the day, he was still his son. He could be relied on at crucial moments. Hui Xuanong snorted. "That's my son's will. What does it have to do with you? Xie Xinxing, if you want me to respect you, you'd better not do those ridiculous things." Hitting someone in front of so many people? Was this the etiquette of the Xie family? Xie Xinxing was so angry that he laughed. "Haha, why didn't you think that you would be laughed at for stealing your own head nurse? What's wrong with slapping you for my sister's sake? According to our family's rules, if you let my sister down, we can drown you in a pig cage." "Nonsense." Wu Xuanong roared. "Who would drown a man in a pig cage? If you want to soak someone, it should be a woman." "Gender equality, Hu Xuanong. Didn't your organization teach you that?" Xie Xinxing put his hands behind his back and said mockingly, "Oh yes, you've been stripped of your military rank and fired from the army. It's over. Your organization doesn't want you anymore. How can you still have the face to stay here? This is my son's home. I can stay here as long as I want." Hui Xuanong's face was pale with anger. This was a great humiliation to him. He had been strong and worked hard all his life. He was one of the top figures in the entire Huaxia Empire's military, but in his old age he had been brought down by a scandal. Hui Xuanong hated Zhang Feng for not keeping her mouth shut and dragging him down, However, he also hated Gu Nianji for exposing this matter and causing a huge uproar. Otherwise, how could he have ended up like this? He wouldn't let her in. She had used underhanded means to harm her own grandfather, yet she still wanted to marry into his family and become his granddaughter-in-law. No way. All right, let's not talk about these things to divert attention, Hu Xiaoheng interrupted them calmly. The military has records that my uncle left a will before he carried out the mission, and it was handed over to my grandfather in the end. Even the military records had been found, so this matter probably wouldn't be so easy to clear up. Wu Xuanong's heart sank. He quickly glanced at Luo Jialan and took a step forward. He pointed at Xie Xinxing and said angrily, "Aren't you afraid of retribution for slandering me like this? Zhang Feng and I were an accident." An accident? Oh. He clutched his chest and his face suddenly wrinkled. His face turned purple and he panted heavily. He waved one hand in the air and shouted, "Why is the power out? Where's the light? Why didn't you turn on the light?" Then he took 2 steps back and bumped into the corner of the coffee table. He lost his footing and with a loud bang, he fell backward and knocked over the coffee table. "Dad!" Hu Guanchen panicked and rushed up to hug Hu Xuanong, only to see that his face had already turned pale and he had fainted. Luo Jialan also ran over and said, "Grandfather Hu's angina is acting up again. I have nitroglycerin tablets here." As she spoke, she took out a small bottle, poured out a pill from it and handed it to Hu Guanchen. Hu Guanchen glanced at her. He guessed that she wouldn't dare to give him a poison to kill Hu Xuanong in front of everyone, so he stuffed it into Hu Xuanong's mouth and immediately said, "Call the hospital and call an ambulance." Luo Jialan quickly took out her phone and made a call. Not long after, the ambulance stopped at their door with its siren blaring. Hu Guanchen carried Hu Xuanong into the ambulance. Luo Jialan took the opportunity to get into the car and followed them all the way to the emergency room of the military general hospital. Although Hu Xuanong no longer had a military rank, his son Hu Guanchen and grandson Hu Xiaoheng were both figures of real power in the military. The military general hospital didn't dare to be negligent and sent the best team of doctors and nurses to treat him. Less than 10 minutes after he was pushed into the emergency room, Hu Xuanong had already woken up. The patient's mood isn't very stable. It's recommended that he stay in the hospital for 1 night for observation. He can be discharged after the data is normal. The attending doctor of the cardiology department of the military general hospital looked at the data detected by the equipment and reminded Hu Guanchen. Hu Guanchen nodded. "It's best to stay for a few more days." Uncle Xie Xinxing looked at Hu Xuanong as if he had seen his mortal enemy, and Hu Guanchen also had a headache. No matter how wrong his old father was, Hu Guanchen couldn't continue to force him when he saw how sick he was. Luo Jialan quickly said, "Uncle Hua, you can go back first. I'll take care of him here. You're old. It's not good for your health to stay up late." Hu Guanchen still had to go down to the basic level tomorrow for an inspection. Even if he wanted to stay here to accompany him, he didn't have the time. "Jialan, you can go back. I'll call the orderlies over to take care of you. It's not convenient for a girl like you to be here." Hu Guanchen didn't want Luo Jialan to have too much contact with Hu Xuanong. However, Hu Xuanong stopped her and said weakly, "Guanchen, let Jialan stay here with me. She's taken care of me for almost 2 years, and she's more dedicated than anyone else. What else are you worried about?" Hu Xuanong was the only person in the Hu family who was kind to Luo Jialan. Hu Guanchen also knew that if Luo Jialan didn't want to cut ties with the Hu family, she would serve Hu Xuanong with all her heart. This kind of thing should have been done by Hu Guanchen's wife, but he didn't have a wife now. Hu Xiaoheng's little fiancée Gu Nianji was delicate, and her personality was like a firecracker. The moment she appeared in front of Hu Xuanong, the two of them would probably clash head-on, let alone serve him. If that happened, Hu Xuanong would probably die of anger. Hu Guanchen didn't dare take the risk. After much consideration, he called his orderlies over and asked them to guard Hu Xuanong's bed with Luo Jialan before leaving in a hurry. Hu Xiaoheng watched the ambulance leave from the door. He walked back and said to Xie Xinxing, "Granduncle, I'm really sorry to have embarrassed you. My grandfather suddenly fell ill. I don't think he'll have time to see you for a while." "Oh, it's okay. I'll call a cardiologist we're familiar with in the Xie family. He'll be here tomorrow to examine and treat him." Xie Xinxing shook his head nonchalantly. "It's getting late. I really need to rest. I still have to get used to the jet lag." Hu Xiaoheng gave Gu Nianji a look and asked her to take Xie Xinxing to the guest room upstairs. Gu Nianji took them to the guest room upstairs and carefully checked the facilities in the room. The toiletries were all brand new, and the bed sheets had been changed. She opened the refrigerator and looked inside. There were bottled mineral water and snacks. They were all fresh. Xie Xinxing's own 2 staff members also searched the room. Gu Nianji stopped being nosy and said to the 2 of them, "If you need anything you can call this number. This is the internal line. Connect me to the orderly's internal affairs room." "Okay, got it." The 2 staff members were a little cold to Gu Nianji. They didn't look at her and casually sent her away. JavaScript, Gu Nianji secretly thought it was strange. She hadn't offended these 2 people. Why was he treating her with such disdain and disdain? It was as if she owed them 800 strings of money. Gu Nianji closed the door in confusion and left Xie Xinxing's guest room. She didn't have her own room in the Hua family mansion. She used to have one, but something happened later, so she stayed with Hua Xiaoheng in the suite on the first floor. Today was no exception. In the eyes of outsiders they were already engaged, so it didn't matter if they lived together. Gu Nianji came down from the second floor and went straight to Hua Xiaoheng's large suite on the first floor. She went to the bathroom to wash her face, remove her makeup and do her evening skincare routine. When she came out of the bathroom she saw that it was getting late and was about to find a small bedroom to sleep in. When she came out she saw a glass of milk on the coffee table in the living room. She walked over and covered it with her hand. The walls of the glass were warm, so it must have been freshly heated. It must be for her. Gu Nianji smiled and took a sip of the milk. Seeing that the light was still on in Hua Xiaoheng's room, she knocked on his door with the milk. "Come in." Hua Xiaoheng's slightly lazy, magnetic and hoarse voice came from the bedroom. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat, and her ears turned red. She pushed the door open and went in. She frowned and complained, "Major General Hua, how did I offend Granduncle's 2 staff members? They seem to have a lot of opinions about me." Hua Xiaoheng sat on the single sofa beside the bed in the bedroom. He supported his head with one hand and placed the other on the armrest of the sofa. He stretched out his long legs and looked at her without batting an eyelid. He waved at her. "Come here, I'll tell you." Gu Nianji put down the milk and walked over. Hua Xiaoheng pulled her onto his lap and sat down. He wiped her body heavily. "An old man in his 30s? Gu Nianji, this is the first chapter of the day, chapter 1311, An Old Man in His 30s. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today is the 3rd chapter. At around 1 p.m., we will add 50,000 Chidian dollars to the first chapter that leader Jiu has tipped in August. At around 8 p.m. the 3rd chapter. P.S. Thank you to leader Momo Moshi for tipping 50,000 Chidian dollars yesterday. Thank you to leader Meow Little Meow for tipping 10,000 Chidian dollars yesterday. Thank you to leader Heaven's Little Candy for tipping 10,000 Chidian dollars yesterday. Thank you to everyone for your birthday wishes and gifts. Chapter 1322. If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have known that you were pretending to be a 30-year-old man online. Hua Xiaoheng's handsome face was cold, but his hands were doing something indescribable. Gu Nianji finally understood what was going on with the 2 staff members' attitudes. However, she had no time to think about anything else. Her heart was in turmoil. He took her to the sky for one moment and then to the ground for another. She gasped in his palm, her voice intermittent. Hua Xiaoheng suddenly stopped and whispered into her ear. "I'm very old?" "No, you're not old. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about myself." Gu Nianji's heart was in turmoil. She was on the verge of tears. Hurry up, hurry up." Hua Xiaoheng remained motionless. Gu Nianji felt uncomfortable all over. She gritted her teeth and said angrily, "You still say you're not old." She couldn't move. These words completely provoked Hua Xiaoheng. That night, Gu Nianji finally understood what it meant to be revenge from a 30-year-old man. It was never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. An old man had to seize every minute to take revenge. Late at night, in the high-end private ward of the Military General Hospital, Hua Xuanong woke up and said that he was hungry. He asked the orderly next to him to cook porridge for him. The orderly woke Luo Jialan up and said, "I'm going to make porridge for Grandfather Hua. Help me look after him." Luo Jialan rubbed her eyes and yawned. "Okay, go ahead." After the orderly left, only Hua Xuanong and Luo Jialan were left in the high-end single ward. Luo Jialan breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Hua Xuanong had woken up. She lowered her head and tucked Hua Xuanong in. Hua Xuanong waited for the orderly's footsteps to fade away before looking at Luo Jialan and whispering, "Jialan, Xiaoheng found out about the will. Did you tell him? Of course not. Luo Jialan denied it. I'm not stupid. Why would I say something like that? You've seen the situation now. I'm afraid our plan won't be able to be completed. Huo Xuanong said lightly and closed his eyes again. Luo Jialan's heart skipped a beat and her voice changed. What did you say? What do you mean? You promised me that if you helped me marry into the Huo family in Shaoheng, I would transfer half of my father's trust fund to Zhang Wenjie. Did grandfather Huo want to go back on his word? Ah, you still want to marry Shaoheng? Do you think that's possible? Huo Xuanong's lips twitched mockingly. I've worked hard enough, but once Xie Xinxing comes back you have no chance of winning at all. If Xie Xinxing hadn't intervened, Huo Xuanong would have had some confidence. But now that Xie Xinxing had made it clear that he was supporting Gu Nianji, Huo Xuanong would be overestimating himself if he continued to go against him. Are you afraid of old Master Xie? Luo Jialan asked softly. But last year in France they treated you pretty well. If I hadn't retired, do you think I would be afraid of Xie Xinxing? Huo Xuanong snorted. You also know that if we take out the will, even Guanchen won't stand on our side. What do you think you can gain from this? Well, I won't marry you and you can forget about my trust fund. Luo Jialan became tough. It's very convenient for me. I can even buy a plane ticket to leave this country immediately. Really? Huo Xuanong suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were like lightning and he didn't look as senile as before. I'll tell you the truth. If you want to fight to the death, I'll make sure you lose everything. Do you know how the property is divided in the will? You don't have a penny, and your mother only has half of my son's savings. The other half of his savings is to be donated to the Institute of High Energy Physics. And the trust fund under his name, he clearly stated that it would all be given to his nephew who is related by blood. He wants to give everything to his nephew and you don't have a share. Luo Jialan was so angry that her chest heaved violently. She clenched her fists and said, You've been talking about the will for so long, but you haven't shown it to me. I don't believe it now. I don't believe a word of it. If my father had a will, why didn't he give it to my mother? You don't believe me now? You didn't believe me when you used the trust fund as a bargaining chip to marry Shaoheng. Huo Xuanong said sharply, The truth is Huo Guanyuan does have a will, and you know why he didn't give it to your mother because he doesn't have your mother in his heart at all. Luo Jialan's tears fell. Don't cry. I hate women crying the most. Huo Xuanong was impatient. How could he not know what kind of person Luo Jialan was? After so many years he had long seen through this person. The reason why he didn't expose her and allowed her to stay in the Huo family was because he needed her to help him divert attention and attract attention. Huo Xuanong, who was familiar with the art of war, also played a trick of building a plank road in the open. Luo Jialan's crying stopped abruptly. She didn't continue to cry but sobbed softly as she said, You said that my father's will was to leave the trust fund to his nephew. And he has two nephews, Major General Hua and Zhang Wenjie. This trust fund is bound to be divided equally between the two of them. You promised me that as long as I gave half of the trust fund to Zhang Wenjie, you would help me marry Huo Shaoheng. This way I would bring the other half of the trust fund over as a dowry, and it wouldn't violate the declaration of the will. Huo Xuanong looked at Luo Jialan with a dark expression. Yes, but what's the situation now? Don't you know? Huo Shaoheng refused to marry Luo Jialan no matter what. He didn't even hesitate to bring the old master of the Xie family back to support Gu Nianji. Others might not know why Xie Xinxing had suddenly returned to the country, but how could Huo Xuanong not know? His return this time definitely had something to do with Huo Shaoheng. Xie Xinxing's brother-in-law had been afraid of his wife all his life. He doted on her and even asked others to do the same. He was really too controlling. Huo Xuanong had truly loved Xie Zian. Fortunately, she wasn't as unreasonable as her sister-in-law, but her temper was just as stubborn. After a long time, even the strongest love had been worn away. Zhang Feng, who was as gentle as water, had entered his sight. She had silently taken care of him for decades and had even secretly given birth to a son for him. This son also had a son and daughter. It was equivalent to him getting his son, grandson and granddaughter without putting in anything. Although Zhang Feng had almost ruined Huo Xuanong's reputation, their son, grandson and granddaughter were innocent. Huo Xuanong couldn't give them a title, so he could only compensate them in material terms. Unfortunately, the plan that had been planned for so many years was about to be completed, but it was cut off by Xie Xinxing. Luo Jialan didn't care so much. She said stubbornly, No matter what the situation is now, you can't not keep your promise to me. Otherwise I can break up with you. Try it. If you dare to break up, I can make you lose everything. Huo Xuanong's voice was stern. He didn't look like he had just had a heart attack. Luo Jialan was shocked and braced herself to say, "Don't be angry. I was wrong. That's not what I meant. I just said it out of anger." "It's best if it's out of anger." Huo Xuanong closed his eyes again. "If you don't want to lose everything, do as I say." Luo Jialan was distraught. She crossed her arms and walked around the ward a few times. She said, "But if they force you to take out the will, I'll still have nothing." According to Huo Xuanong, Luo Jialan had no part in the division of the trust fund in Huo Guanyuan's will. At this moment, Luo Jialan was also filled with deep resentment towards her nominal father. No matter what, her mother had married Huo Guanyuan. How could he pretend that she didn't exist? Luo Jialan clenched her fists and glared at Huo Xuanong. "Tell me, what can I do?" Huo Xuanong opened his eyes. His expression was cold and gloomy. "Transfer half of the trust fund to Zhang Wenjie immediately, and then I'll destroy the will. That way no one would know that Huo Xiaoheng was also involved." Huo Xuanong knew very well that when his eldest son, Huo Guanyuan, made this will, he definitely didn't know that Huo Xuanong had an illegitimate son living outside, so the nephew he mentioned in the will was definitely only Huo Xiaoheng. As for why he didn't mention Huo Xiaoheng by name, it was probably to save face for Luo Xinxue and Song Jining. Huo Guanyuan also didn't know that other than Huo Xiaoheng, he also had a blood-related nephew named Zhang Wenjie. If he really wanted to take it to court, according to the will, Huo Xiaoheng and Zhang Wenjie would split the trust fund in half. But he couldn't take it to court. This was today's second update, Chapter 1312, More Serious. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. The first 50,000 Chidian dollars that President Jiu had tipped in August had been delivered. At around 8 p.m. the third update. Moi. Chapter 1323. Huo Xuanong didn't dare and didn't want to make the will public because Huo Guanyuan's will had content that made him even more uneasy than the distribution of property, so he chose to keep it a secret. Destroy the will? Luo Jialan was also thinking nervously. If she and her mother really didn't have a share in the will, then destroying it was indeed the best way. But what if Huo Xuanong was lying to her? Wouldn't she have lost half of her assets? Luo Jialan looked at Huo Xuanong suspiciously. "Can you let me see it with my own eyes?" "There's no proof." "Hey, you want proof, right? Okay, then go to the court and talk about proof. Just wait to lose everything." Huo Xuanong closed his eyes and ignored Luo Jialan. The older, the wiser. His calm demeanor made Luo Jialan unable to doubt him. She had no choice but to believe that Huo Guanyuan's will really didn't include her and her mother. She believed this because if she were in Huo Guanyuan's shoes, she wouldn't have left all her assets to an outsider's child either. Of course, Huo Guanyuan had also left her and her mother enough assets to live a good life. However, this asset was nothing compared to the trust fund that Xie Zian had left Huo Guanyuan. Until now, the trust fund income transferred to her bank account every year was only 10% of the total income. This was because this was the percentage that Huo Guanyuan had set when he was alive. Huo Guanyuan had been a soldier at that time, so he didn't have much to spend. In fact, even 10% was too much for him. However, according to the trust fund's custody regulations, a certain percentage had to be transferred to the beneficiary every year, so he chose the lowest percentage. The rest was still in the trust fund and continued to be invested. After so many years of compounding interest, the trust fund had already become an astronomical figure. Just this 10% annual income had already reached 7 figures after 17 years. It wasn't until 2 years ago, when her background was exposed and Huo Xuanong had a showdown with her, that she realized that Huo Guanyuan still had a will with Huo Xuanong. No one could give up such a huge benefit. It was even more impossible for her to hand over the entire trust fund. She was struggling fiercely in her mind. It wasn't until the orderly walked in with a box of freshly cooked porridge that Luo Jialan made up her mind. She served Huo Xuanong up to eat the porridge, then asked the orderly to wash the bowls, chopsticks and food boxes. After the orderly left again, Luo Jialan said to Huo Xuanong, "I promise you." Huo Xuanong's expression didn't change, but he was excited inside. He had hidden for so many years just to wait for the most suitable time to transfer this fortune to Zhang Wenjie as compensation to his other son, Zhang Baochen, for so many years. "Okay, then go and settle the paperwork as soon as possible. The Xie family is here now. We can't disturb them." Huo Xuanong instructed Luo Jialan. "Find a trust fund custodian manager you're familiar with and ask him to complete the formalities for you. If you need Wenjia's identity documents, let me know immediately. I'll ask Wenjia to come over. Luo Jialan pursed her lips and reluctantly agreed but said, but I did what we promised. What about you? You promised to help me marry Xiaoheng? Stop dreaming. I gave you half of my trust fund. Why can't you take the money and marry someone else? You can't even think about Xiaoheng. Hua Xuanong's face darkened. Don't be so shameless. Luo Jialan was so angry that she couldn't speak. This damned old man. He was tearing down the bridge before he even crossed it. If he were to fall into her hands one day, she'd make sure he'd die. Luo Jialan suppressed the anger in her heart and nodded. She looked at her phone and said, okay, I'll call Switzerland right away. It was around 10 o'clock in the morning in Zurich, Switzerland, and it was the time for the staff of the Trust Fund Custodian Agency to go to work. Luo Jialan walked out of Hua Xuanong's ward and came to the lawn outside the hospital. She looked at the starry sky above her head and dialed a number. She was a big client, and the phone had only rung twice when someone picked up. Hello, Ms. Hua. How can I help you? Luo Jialan's face darkened as she said, I want to change half of the fund's beneficiary. How long will it take to complete the formalities? The other party was a little surprised and quickly said, this situation is more complicated. I need to check before I can answer you. How long will it take? I'm in a hurry. Luo Jialan said impatiently, if you can't change it for me quickly, I'll transfer the fund back to the country immediately. She was threatening the other party. What fund managers were most afraid of was fund redemption. It was like a bank run that could bankrupt them. Therefore he quickly said, got it, I'll check it now. The person opened the terms of the fund on the computer regarding the change of beneficiary and read it quickly. He said to Luo Jialan over the phone, Ms. Hua, if you want to change the beneficiary of the fund, you need your certificate of consent to the change, as well as the other party's identity documents, such as passport, health certificate, and birth certificate. You're Chinese nationals, so you also need a copy of the other party's ID card. In addition, you also need to provide the other party's bank account number so that we can transfer the annual income to his bank account in proportion. Luo Jialan pursed her lips and said, last time, it didn't seem that troublesome to change the beneficiary to my name. Last time it was an inheritance. All you needed to do was produce the original beneficiary's death certificate and will. You said that there was no will, so according to the law, the death certificate and the legally permitted order of inheritance are enough. The trust fund had strict legal provisions to ensure the distribution of benefits between the beneficiary and the trustor. Luo Jialan calmed down a little and her tone softened. Okay, I'll send you the things right away. May I ask how soon it will take effect after these requirements are met? After all the conditions are met, it can take effect as soon as possible. The person said to Luo Jialan very attentively, our fund has helped you manage it for more than 10 years, and our annual income is beating teeth. You can rest assured that we can take care of it. Okay, I trust you. Luo Jialan complimented him a few times and hung up. She took a deep breath, but her chest was still very depressed. Why wasn't she the one marrying Hua Xiaoheng? Why was it Gu Nianji, that little orphan girl with nothing? Hua Xiaoheng, do you know what kind of huge benefits you've given up? Luo Jialan clenched her fists. She wanted nothing more than to rush up to Hua Xiaoheng and question him. But there was no need for her to question him. Hua Xiaoheng had ordered Yin Shixiang to monitor Luo Jialan when he was in Russia. Her phone had already been installed with a Trojan horse program, and every word of her call today had been recorded. After Hua Xiaoheng went to the office in the morning, Yin Shixiang sent him the contents of the surveillance. After Hua Xiaoheng heard it, he sat alone in the office and thought for a while. He asked Yin Shixiang, has the hospital been monitored? Yin Shixiang shook his head. The coordinates show that Luo Jialan and grandfather Hua are in a high-end ward in the Military General Hospital. We didn't install any surveillance equipment there. Hua Xiaoheng didn't say anything. He just looked at him quietly and expressionlessly. Yin Shixiang quickly added, but the hospital has its own surveillance equipment. It's just that it can't record. There's only a picture. Is that okay? This was today's third update, Chapter 1313, The Deal. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Good night, Mwax. Mwax. Chapter 1324. Seeing that Hua Xiaoheng still hadn't said a word, Yin Shixiang's heart began to pound. He quickly said, Hua Xiao, I really wasn't careless. Grandfather Hua is staying in the VIP ward of the Military General Hospital. We can't listen in on him as we please. I have to apply and get a permit before I can monitor the high-class wards there. Hua Xuanong had suddenly been hospitalized last night. They hadn't been able to get the permit in time even if they had applied overnight. Because there were too many confidentiality clauses involved, they had to go through the procedure step by step. In order to prevent the Special Operations Forces from having too much power, the Senate, the Cabinet, and the military all had very strong restrictions on them. They couldn't just do whatever they wanted. Hua Xiaoheng also knew this reason, but he didn't blame Yin Shixiang. He was just wondering if his grandfather's sudden illness was really due to anger, or was it because he wanted to find a safe place to talk. He would never underestimate the experience and wisdom of the older generation. Hua Xiaoheng thought about it for a while and said, "Go to the hospital and get the surveillance footage from last night. Remember not to alert anyone. Go alone." "Yes, Chief." Yin Shixiang immediately saluted and rushed to the surveillance room of the Army General Hospital. The surveillance in the hospital was only used to observe the condition of the ward. It was completely different from the surveillance of the special forces. When Yin Shixiang pulled up the surveillance footage of Hua Xuanong's ward and fast-forwarded through it, he still didn't have any clues. Because the angle of the surveillance camera was aimed at the entire ward. The bed was right under the surveillance camera. Therefore, from the angle of the surveillance camera, they could only see the tops of Hua Xuanong and Luo Jialan's heads. They couldn't even see their facial expressions clearly, let alone see how they spoke. Yin Shixiang sent this part of the surveillance to the cloud system and shared it with Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng opened the surveillance video in his office and watched it frame by frame. He looked very carefully, but just like Yin Shixiang, he didn't find anything. However, it could be seen that Luo Jialan and Old Master Hua had a very cautious conversation in the middle of the night. Their body language showed that they were very alert and nervous, but as for what they were talking about, only the two of them probably knew. Hua Xiaoheng turned off the surveillance camera and fell into deep thought until his phone rang and interrupted his thoughts. He looked at his phone. It was a call from Old Master Xia. After connecting the Bluetooth headset, Hua Xiaoheng stood up and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He walked to the window and greeted with a smile, "Granduncle is awake? How was your rest last night?" Xie Xinxing's hearty laughter came from the Bluetooth headset. "Ah, not bad. By the way, the breakfast at your house is average. Your father has already left. He said that he's going to the grassroots level to inspect the work. Your grandfather is in the hospital, and little Nianji is the only one at home with me. I wanted to ask you something. I'm going to take little Nianji to my villa in the West Mountains to get her bearings. What do you think?" "Sure. With granduncle taking care of Nianji, of course I'm relieved." Hua Xiaoheng smiled and nodded. "If Nianji has time, you can take her to learn the way." This meant that they would have to keep in touch in the future. Xie Xinxing nodded happily and said, "If you're free today, come over to my place for a meal. Also, I have something to tell you. Yesterday your grandfather suddenly fell ill. Did you find out what you wanted to know?" Hua Xiaoheng remembered Luo Jialan's phone call he had overheard and said, "I was just about to ask my uncle for a favor or my cousin. If it's convenient for you, that would be even better." "What's so serious?" Xie Xinxing was interested. "Tell me about it." Hua Xiaoheng told him about the trust fund and asked, "If you want to change the beneficiary of the trust fund, how long will it take?" "Oh, I don't know much about that. Call your uncle and ask him to find a professional to explain it to you." As he spoke, Xie Xinxing had already asked his subordinate to call his son, Xie Beichen. He said to him, "Beichen, Xiaoheng has some questions to ask your fund expert. Can you help him find someone to ask right away?" Xie Beichen immediately said, "No problem. I have a fund expert with me. If you have anything to say, you can ask him right away." As he spoke, he turned on the video call. Xie Xinxing wanted to pull Hua Xiaoheng in again, but Hua Xiaoheng declined politely. "It's not convenient for me to make a video call. I just need to hear what you guys are talking about." "Okay, I'll share the audio with you." Xie Xinxing didn't insist and turned on the audio for Hua Xiaoheng. In less than 5 minutes, they formed a remote video conference group to communicate. Gu Nianji's smiling face also appeared in the video. She smiled and greeted everyone. "Hi. Hello, I'm serious, Gu Nianji. Uncle Beichen, can you hear me?" In the video, Xie Beichen, who was in his 40s, was mature and steady. He chuckled. "I can hear you. Little Nianji has already called me uncle, so I can't run away with a greeting gift." He then asked for Gu Nianji's phone number and added her on WeChat. Then, with a light tap of his finger, a red packet of 190,000 euros appeared on their chat page. "This is a late 19th birthday present for little Nianji." Xie Beichen deliberately teased Hua Xiaoheng. "Xiaoheng, I want to criticize you. I introduced you to so many girlfriends in the past, but you said you didn't want them. Now you found a little girl. You're slapping me in the face. Gu Nianji happily opened the red packet and counted the 4 zeros after 19 happily. Seeing that Gu Nianji didn't mind, Hua Xiaoheng smiled and said, Uncle, you must be joking. Let's talk business today. We'll have a long talk when you return to the country. Okay. Xie Beichen was also a busy person. After a few jokes, he asked the fund expert to answer the question. Hua Xiaoheng asked, May I ask how long it will take for the trust fund to change the beneficiary? The expert quickly said, That's very simple. If all the conditions are in line with the regulations, it will take effect as long as the information is archived. That means that as long as you fax the necessary authorization change and the new beneficiary's identity documents, you can change the beneficiary in the system? Hua Xiaoheng was deep in thought. Yes, that's the theory. The expert nodded and said politely, Trust funds, especially irrevocable trust funds, are protected by very strict legal provisions. As long as everything the other party does is within the scope of the law, we have no reason to stop the other party's decision. Hua Xiaoheng frowned. What if we need to stop them? He couldn't let Luo Jialan make any changes to the trust fund under Hua Guanyuan's name before he figured out what was going on with Hua Guanyuan's will. Need to stop them? The expert was confused. May I ask if you can explain things more clearly? Hua Xiaoheng thought about it carefully. He really didn't have a particularly legal reason to stop Luo Jialan from changing the beneficiary of the fund. Firstly, he didn't have Hua Guanyuan's will in his hands. Secondly, Luo Jialan had already inherited Hua Guanyuan's fund from her mother. She was already the owner of the trust fund and had complete control over it. What could he do to stop Luo Jialan from exercising her ownership? Hua Xiaoheng fell into deep thought again. Xie Xinxing saw that he was silent, so he said to Xie Beichen, Xiaoheng is talking about the fund we checked a while ago. It's your aunt's inheritance. It was given to your eldest cousin, Hua Guanyuan, and later inherited by your eldest cousin's daughter, Hua Jialan. Oh, it's this fund. I have an impression of it. Xie Beichen nodded. When Xiaoheng asked me to check, I found out that this fund had been transferred to a certain bank account in Germany, and it was a large sum of money. When Gu Nianji heard the words, a certain bank account in Germany, she suddenly looked up and asked blankly, What German bank account? Weren't we talking about Uncle Hua's trust fund? What does it have to do with a German bank account? Xie Beichen explained to her, We tracked down the flow of funds in this trust fund for the past 2 years and found that sometime last year, it was transferred to a bank account in Germany, which was the bank account of the German murderer, Seth's stepfather. Here, Nianji, I remember you were the defense lawyer in that case? The case was very exciting. Gu Nianji. She quickly switched to the text message page with Hua Xiaoheng and texted him, What the hell is going on? The trust fund that Luo Jialan inherited has something to do with the incident in Germany? Did she also have a part in hunting me down? Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Wasn't Gu Nianji too smart? Just the phrase, a certain bank account in Germany, immediately reminded her of what had happened in Germany. This also meant that the trauma that incident had caused her had yet to recover. Hua Xiaoheng didn't know how to comfort her for a moment, so he just replied indifferently, We're still investigating it. Gu Nianji's hand was trembling as she held her phone. She didn't know how she had offended Luo Jialan. If it was just for Hua Xiaoheng, did she think that Hua Xiaoheng would marry her if she died? Not only was she out of her mind, but her entire body was covered in water. Luo Jialan was basically a jellyfish. Gu Nianji took 2 deep breaths to calm herself down. Hua Xiaoheng was still asking the expert, Is there really no way to stop it? Unless you can produce concrete evidence to prove that what she did was illegal, the trustee of the fund really has no reason to stop her from changing the beneficiary of the fund, the expert answered firmly. Gu Nianji listened for a long time and finally understood. It turned out that Luo Jialan wanted to change the beneficiary of Hua Guanyuan's trust fund, but Hua Xiaoheng thought that the ownership of the trust fund was questionable. He didn't want her to change it now, so he asked to stop it. However, the fund expert said that as long as it was legal, they had no right to stop it. Everyone had their reasons, but Gu Nianji was unconditionally on Hua Xiaoheng's side, so she had to think for Hua Xiaoheng's sake. Gu Nianji lowered her head and pondered for a while. She quickly found a breakthrough point and asked calmly, Mr. Expert, are you saying that as long as it's legal, we can't stop her from doing anything to the fund? Yes, that's what the legal provisions of the irrevocable trust fund say. Okay then. Gu Nianji looked up at the camera on Xie Xinxing's phone and quickly said, We request that the entire trust fund be frozen. You can't withdraw any proceeds, transfer any funds, or change any beneficiaries. Before the freeze is lifted, no one can do anything to this fund, including the owner of the fund, Luo Jialan. The fund expert's eyes widened like goldfish. What did you say? I've been explaining it for so long, but you still don't understand. There was no legal issue, so they couldn't stop Luo Jialan from doing anything. I understand, Gu Nianji continued. I'll immediately apply to the Swiss court for a freeze. The reason is that we suspect that the owner of this fund, Luo Jialan, is working with German criminals to launder money. The evidence is the large fund transfer that Uncle Beichen found. Because only the accusation of money laundering could achieve the effect of freezing it immediately. No other accusation was as swift and powerful as this one. The fund expert was so shocked by Gu Nianji's words that he couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. After a while, he gave her a thumbs up and praised her. That's amazing. You can even think of this. But aren't you only 19 years old? You know the law too. Are you really a lawyer? This was the first update of the day, Chapter 13-14, She Has a Share Too. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. Today was still the third update. At around 1 p.m., the monthly votes were increased to 2,400. At around 8 p.m., the third update. Moi. Chapter 13-25. Gu Nianji smiled and said, You're exaggerating. I'm not that impressive. I just want to stall for time as quickly and as cheaply as possible. Although she knew very well that Luo Jialan's money was most likely funding a contract murder. If this accusation was used, she would need to provide other evidence to the court and wait for the court to review it before deciding whether to freeze it. That would be too slow. Only the accusation of money laundering could immediately freeze the other party's funds as long as they provided proof of a suspicious fund transfer. They could slowly investigate, but the money could not be used for the time being. The fund expert rubbed his hands excitedly. Okay, that's a good reason. Legal and proper. When are you going to apply to the Swiss court? I guarantee that as soon as you submit the application, I'll get the fund custodian to freeze all the principal and income. Gu Nianji checked online and said, Wait a minute. It's early in the morning in Switzerland. No one will accept my application even if I want to. The fund expert nodded repeatedly. It's okay. Send us a message when your application is ready. We'll send someone to wait here 24 hours a day. We promise we won't delay your matters. Because two of the Xie family's most powerful figures were present, the fund expert was especially efficient. Gu Nianji agreed and said, Then I'll go prepare the application to the Swiss court. I'll take my leave first. Uncle, bye-bye. Uncle, I can't accompany you to the West Mountain Villa. Xie Xinxing smiled and said, It's fine, it's fine. I'll stay here with you. Go ahead and do your work. We'll go together after you're done. He had made up his mind to spend more time with Gu Nianji. Xie Beichen was full of praise on the other end of the video call. Little Nianji, the younger generation will surpass the older generation. Come to our place. Don't mess around with Xiaoheng. Come to Uncle's place. You can choose any handsome man you like. It's different every day. Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips and said in a low voice, Uncle, I'm here. Oh, are you jealous? It's a rare sight, ha. Xie Beichen laughed happily and bid farewell to everyone. After the video call ended, Xie Xinxing continued to talk to Hua Xiaoheng on his phone. Xiaoheng, little Nianji is such a treasure. You're so lucky. Xie Xinxing clicked his tongue. If you hadn't made the first move, I would have abducted her to Europe to be my proper granddaughter-in-law. Your granddaughter-in-law? Hua Xiaoheng was speechless. Wake up. You already have several great-grandchildren. Do you still need a granddaughter-in-law? Our Nianji won't marry a second marriage man. Xie Xinxing thought about it and realized that it was true. Among his grandchildren, the ones who were of the right age were all taken. The few who weren't were not even 10 years old yet. There were distant relatives of the right age, but Xie Xinxing couldn't bear to let such a good girl like Gu Nianji marry a distant relative of the Xie family. If that was the case, Hua Xiaoheng would be better off. After all, he was his sister's grandson. All right, I know you treasure your little fiancé. Xie Xinxing touched his head. I'm going to watch TV. I haven't been back in China for a long time. I still need to familiarize myself with the country. Gu Nianji returned to Hua Xiaoheng's suite and immediately turned on her computer. She used her phone to send a message to Xie Beichen and asked them to fax the evidence of the fund transfer to her. She downloaded the procedure for submitting the complaint from the Swiss court's website, then began to fill out the form, write the complaint, and list the evidence. For a law student, this was all paperwork. As long as one had a certain level of legal literacy, care, and patience, it would be fine. However, to be on the safe side, Gunyenji still made a very detailed document package for the complaint. From the cover letter to the listing of the evidence, everything was done in an orderly manner. She spent the entire morning and finally managed to fax her complaint to the Swiss court when it was just starting to work. For the time being, the Swiss court could not accept the complaint in electronic form. It had to be written in paper form. In addition to letters, faxes also had legal effect. Her pleadings were detailed and well organized. It didn't take long for the clerk of the other party's court to sort out the records and submit them to the judge. Because it was an urgent complaint related to money laundering, the judge also accepted it as soon as possible. After carefully reading the complaint and evidence submitted by Gunyenji, the judge quickly agreed to file the case and issued a legally binding freezing order to the trust fund. Thus, it only took 2 hours for Gunyenji to send the fax to the court to issue a freezing order to the trust fund in Switzerland. The fund expert who was guarding the fund custodian office didn't expect to receive an email from Gunyenji, but a direct freezing order from the court. This meant that not only had Gunyenji's complaint been accepted immediately, but it had also been approved immediately. This was a qualitative leap for the Swiss court, which was inefficient and often waited for several years for a case. The senior manager of the fund custodian office looked at the freezing order and was flabbergasted. He asked the fund expert, "What the hell is going on?" Yesterday the owner of the fund, Ms. Hua, asked to change the beneficiary as soon as possible. Why was it frozen today? I'm afraid it was frozen because she wanted to change the beneficiary. The fund expert said with a smile and showed the court freezing order to the man. This is the court's order. You have to execute it immediately. That's no problem. With a court order, what are we afraid of? The man said with a cheeky smile. She can't redeem it even if it's frozen. Haha. In the afternoon, Luo Jialan felt her eyelids twitch for no reason. She rubbed her eyes and walked to Hu Xuanong's ward. She said softly, "How's it going on your side? Are the identity documents ready?" "They'll come to see me soon. I'll ask them to give you a copy of their identity cards." Hu Xuanong also whispered, "Just wait for a day. There's no hurry, right?" Luo Jialan nodded and tried to turn her back to the surveillance camera in the ward. "I'll make a call and ask." She dialed the number of the fund custodian office and asked, "I'm almost done with the procedures. Are you guys ready?" The fund manager on the other side actually changed his expression and said to her seriously, "What procedures? What do we need to prepare?" "I'm Luo Jialan, no Hu Jialan, the owner of the trust fund. I asked to change the beneficiary of the fund. Have you forgotten? I just called you yesterday." Luo Jialan's voice grew louder. He was really too unreliable. What he said yesterday he had already forgotten today. The man sneered and said in a drawn-out voice, "Oh, that matter, it's like this. We just received a freezing order from the Swiss court. You're suspected of money laundering, and your trust fund has been temporarily frozen." Luo Jialan's entire body trembled. It was as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her from head to toe. "What did you say?" Her voice suddenly rose, shrill and trembling. She trembled like a fallen leaf in the wind. Wherever her voice passed, there was only desolation. This was today's second update, Chapter 13-15, Opportunities are only for those who are prepared. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommendation tickets. The monthly tickets were delivered at 2,400 plus updates. At around 8 p.m. the third update. Moi. Chapter 13-26. I said, because someone accused you of money laundering, the Swiss court froze your trust fund. The person on the other end of the phone shrugged and said regretfully, "So we can't do anything to your trust fund for the time being. You can't change the beneficiary or withdraw the proceeds, so from now on until the court's freeze order is lifted, we won't transfer your proceeds to your bank account." Luo Jialan's pupils constricted. "I can't withdraw the proceeds either? Isn't it illegal for you not to transfer the money to me? What are the terms of the trust fund? You have to transfer a certain percentage of the proceeds to me every month." "Yes, that's right, but this clause can't conflict with the court's order. When the court issues an order, we must give priority to satisfying the court's requirements. This is also one of the terms of the trust fund." Luo Jialan clenched her fists tightly and closed her eyes. There were so many words in those terms, and she wasn't confident that she had read them. There was actually such a trap waiting for her. I haven't laundered money, don't slander me. Luo Jialan gritted her teeth. I want to find a lawyer. Who is framing me? No comment on that. You can contact the court. Of course you have to find a lawyer. Otherwise, are you going to respond to the lawsuit yourself? The trust fund's custodian manager said politely, Okay, I still have something to do. I'll hang up first. If you need anything, email me. After saying that, he hung up without hesitation. Ever since Luo Jialan inherited the trust fund, this was the first time she had been treated so rudely by the custodian there. While she was angry, she also felt a trace of panic. What was going on? Why did they suddenly accuse her of laundering money? She could swear to God that she had never laundered money. In a moment of desperation, Luo Jialan dialed Kai Xingnan's number. Lawyer Kai, there's something you have to help me with. Hurry up. I can't wait. Luo Jialan said in a panic. Can you contact the Swiss court right away? Wait, what happened to you? Why are you contacting the Swiss court? Kai Xingnan's expression was also very ugly. I just received a subpoena from the imperial court. Song Jinning's lawsuit against you for intentional homicide has been filed by the court. What? Luo Jialan's voice rose again, trembling intermittently, like the yellow leaves on the ground being swept up by a whirlwind and shattered into pieces. This was simply like a leaky roof met with continuous rain, a ship late and then met with the first wind. Blessings never come in pairs, but misfortunes never come singly. Luo Jialan was anxious. Didn't you say that they didn't have evidence, that the prosecutor wouldn't accept it, and that the court wouldn't file a case? What was going on? Did they use the Hua family's power to force the court to file a case against me? Kai Xingnan looked at the subpoena with a gloomy expression and nodded. I guess they used their power for personal gain and obstructed justice. Despicable. How could they do this? Luo Jialan waved her fist fiercely. I won't let them succeed. Don't worry, I've already contacted the media. The Hua family will have to bear the consequences. Kai Xingnan smiled. Gunyanji, let's see how much longer you can be so arrogant. Kai Xingnan's aunt, Kai Songyin, was originally a big shot in the media world and had the title of Queen of the Media. Unfortunately, because of her uncle-in-law, Tan Dongbang's connections, the court convicted her of election bribery and manipulation of the general election. The assets of the companies that participated in election bribery and manipulation of the general election were confiscated. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, suspended for a year, and forced to retire. Kai Songyin was now living in seclusion at home and was under surveillance. However, although she couldn't appear in person, she could still use the connections and resources she had accumulated over the years. Kai Xingnan said, I'll contact the media right away. When will the domestic case be heard? Luo Jialan rubbed her temples. She was in a bad mood. In 2 weeks. Kai Xingnan chuckled. That's really early. Then put it aside for now. Help me find out what's going on with the Swiss court. How could my trust fund be suspected of money laundering? There's nothing like that. If there is, it's the trusteeship agency who did it. It has nothing to do with me. Kai Xingnan nodded. With one more lawsuit, we have to sign an additional attorney's agreement. I'll sign right away. Hurry up and help me settle the case in Switzerland. Luo Jialan said anxiously, I can't wait a moment longer. They've already frozen my trust fund. The smile on Kai Xingnan's face didn't change. Okay, I'll send you our new attorney's agreement right away. Not long after, Luo Jialan received a new attorney's agreement from Kai Xingnan. It was a case against the Swiss court trust fund. When Luo Jialan saw the advance payment on it, her head buzzed and her vision went black. She immediately called Kai Xingnan again and said angrily, You can explain this case by writing a letter. Why did you receive so much advance payment? The last case related to Song Jinning, Kai Xingnan received an advance payment of $1 million from her. This time it was $5 million. Hee Miss Luo, I'm afraid you don't know that cases related to the economy are actually charged according to a certain percentage of the value of the subject matter. For example, if your trust fund is 10 million, I'll charge 1 million. If it's 100 million, I'll charge 10 million. If it's 1 billion, I'll charge 100 million for consulting fees. Your trust fund has more than 1 billion euros in capital, right? I'll only charge you an advance payment of $5 million, which is already a friendly price. Kai Xingnan said calmly, not caring about Luo Jialan's impolite tone at all. Luo Jialan was dumbfounded. If she could collect so much money, why didn't she go rob someone? However, at this juncture, she managed to hold back the anger in her heart. She took a deep breath and said, "Okay, 5 million it is. I'll transfer it to you right away. Hurry up and settle the Swiss court for me. Explain that I've never laundered money at all. That's a false accusation." Kai Xingnan looked at the freezing order issued by the Swiss court while checking the case filing number. Then she found the case code related to Luo Jialan. Her face turned green when she saw the lawyer's signature on it. Was Gun Yanji again? Was this woman trying to pick a fight with her? Kai Xingnan skimmed through all the complaints and called Luo Jialan with a cold face. The other party's complaint states that you transferred a large sum of money to a German bank account last year and are suspected of money laundering. Luo Jialan became even more flustered. What? What transfer? Why don't I remember? Her teeth were chattering and her mind was filled with the thought, how is that possible? How is that possible? How did they know? Why would they look into something that happened almost a year ago? Didn't they say that users had a right to privacy? How could others know about her fund account movements? Luo Jialan angrily punched the wall of the ward. That trust fund custodian really tricked me. They even told others about this kind of thing. I'm going to sue them. Kai Xingnan calmly corrected her. This isn't a trust fund scamming you, but according to the European Union's anti-money laundering law, such a large cross-border transfer of funds must be reported to the bank regulator. The other party claimed that they found the information from the bank regulator and had nothing to do with your trust fund custodian. Then what should I do? Luo Jialan withered and leaned against the wall weakly. She couldn't even stand steadily. What should I do? Just explain to the court what that transfer was for, Kai Xingnan said casually. She didn't think it was a big deal. There were a lot of rich people who transferred money across borders. It was just a routine questioning by the court. They all liked to use money laundering to bluff, but most of them were false alarms. What was it for? Do I have to say it? Isn't this my personal privacy? Luo Jialan stammered. She couldn't say that it was to fund someone to get rid of Gun Yanji, could she? Wouldn't that mean that she had hired someone to kill her? This was a more serious crime than money laundering. What should she do? This was giving her a choice. Did she want money or her life? Who was so crafty? Who hated her so much? From this angle, no matter how she responded, there would be a huge pit waiting for her to jump into. Did they want her to die? This was today's third update, Chapter 1316, Money or Life. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Good night, dears. Wax. Chapter 1327. Who was it? Who sued me? Luo Jialan asked in a cold voice. She wanted to see who had eaten the heart of a bear and the guts of a leopard to want to put her to death. She, Luo Jialan, wasn't to be trifled with. Luo Jialan was venting her anger when she heard Kai Xingnan say with a hint of hatred, "Who else could it be? My sworn enemy Gun Yanji. I knew she didn't like me and wanted to snatch everything from me. The chief legal advisor of the Senate, a big client like you, Miss Luo. In short, she had to interfere no matter what I did." Luo Jialan's heart trembled when she heard Gun Yanji's name. It's really her? Yes, her name was signed on the court file. It seems that she's very upset that you wanted to fake marry Major General Hua. She's targeting you. Kai Xingnan said with a smile on her face. Her chin was slightly raised and she looked quite pleased with herself. Luo Jialan was silent for a moment, then said with a wry smile, "How much does she hate me? She wants to sue me at home and she wants to sue me abroad. What kind of grudge do I have with her? Forget it. You want to steal her man, so why would she give you any face? Isn't it normal to sue you?" Kai Xingnan smiled easily. "But you don't have to worry. With me as your lawyer, Gun Yanji won't be able to get any benefits. Then can we prove that she's falsely accusing me out of personal spite?" Luo Jialan asked nervously. "Can you explain the dispute between me and her to the Swiss court?" "I'm afraid not," Kai Xingnan said tactfully. The angle she's looking for is money laundering, not jealousy. So if you say that you and she had a bad relationship because of a man, so she deliberately took revenge on you, I believe you, but the Swiss court won't believe it." "Then what should I do?" Luo Jialan became irritated. "This is my money. How can there be money laundering?" "Here's the thing. These are the basic procedures. Your money exceeds a certain limit, so you need to explain the whole story to the European Union's regulatory bank." Kai Xingnan patiently explained to her. For example, if you're borrowing money from someone, giving it as a gift, or using it for consumption? In short, just tell me the proper origin and purpose of the money. It could be done this way. Luo Jialan felt relieved and quickly said, it's a gift to someone. Yes, you have to make it clear what the relationship between the person receiving the gift and you is. Is he a relative or a friend? Kai Xingnan began to fill in the form for Luo Jialan as she spoke on the phone. This questionnaire was the one that the European Union regulated banks had to answer regarding large financial transfers. Do they have to be relatives or friends? Luo Jialan asked carefully. Someone else had asked her to transfer money into that account. To be honest, before that she had no idea who that account belonged to. If you're not a relative or a friend, then you're the prime suspect. Kai Xingnan stopped typing and stared at the laptop screen for a while. What's wrong? Can't you even tell me the truth? I'm telling the truth. Luo Jialan retorted subconsciously. A friend of mine actually asked me to transfer the money. I don't know who that account belongs to. You don't know who the account belongs to, yet you transferred such a large sum of money? Kai Xingnan sneered. It doesn't matter if you treat me like a fool, but the judges of the Swiss court and the European Union's banking regulators aren't to be trifled with. That sum of money was not a small sum. 5 million euros was first deposited into the bank account of Seth's stepfather, York, and later transferred by York to another bank account. That account was later proven to be controlled by Seth, the murderer who tortured and killed Li Haiqing. While Seth was on the run, he had been withdrawing cash from that bank account. Kai Xingnan flipped through the information about Seth and his stepfather, York, and shook her head. Who exactly is your friend? Did he trick you like that? Do you know who the bank account he asked you to transfer money to belongs to? Seth and his stepfather, York. Luo Jialan bit her lip and said stubbornly, I don't know them. Who are these two people? It's the case in Germany that caused a sensation on the entire blue planet last year. The case of the Wuxia Empire female exchange student being tortured and murdered. Kai Xingnan scoffed. I don't believe you don't know. Gun Yinji was also the plaintiff's lawyer in that case. She helped the dead Wuxia Empire female exchange student in the lawsuit. Not only did she win, but she also claimed a huge sum of money from the police station in Roslau, Germany. Luo Jialan's face turned pale as she muttered, I really don't know. I'm not interested in foreign news. Alright, it's okay if you don't know anything about this case. Kai Xingnan saw that Luo Jialan refused to admit it, so she didn't pursue the matter. She continued, then tell me your friend's name and ID number. I'll fill it in on the form as a favor for your friend. But for this, your friend needs to admit it. Luo Jialan's face turned even paler. She whispered, but she's already dead. Dead. Kai Xingnan's hand paused. She looked up at the computer screen and asked nervously, how did she die? I'm not sure either. I think she met pirates when she was traveling abroad and died in the Caribbean Sea. Her name is Yamaguchi Aiko. Luo Jialan's voice became softer and softer. What should we do? Do you need any more evidence? Dead? Kai Xingnan was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, it's better if she's dead. Yes, I'll write her on it. Luo Jialan had a bad feeling about this. She didn't want Yamaguchi Aiko's name to appear on any documents related to her. However, Kai Xingnan was stubborn. She even said, alright then, if you don't bring Yamaguchi Aiko out, then you'll have to carry it yourself. I'll be honest with you, because Seth is a convicted murderer and he was killed while he was on the run. If you can't get rid of this relationship, then it won't be as simple as money laundering. You might even be charged with complicity in murder. Luo Jialan covered her forehead with her hand and let out a long sigh. Murder again. Was she involved in murder? But honestly, she really didn't want to kill anyone. She was forced to do it. Kai Xingnan hung up the phone and began to help Luo Jialan draft a response to the Swiss court. Luo Jialan held her phone and looked up in a daze. Her gaze fell on Hui Xuanong, who was sitting on the hospital bed without saying a word. He stared at Luo Jialan with an unfathomable look in his eyes. Luo Jialan didn't have the time to figure out what Hui Xuanong meant. She was so anxious in Hui Xuanong's VIP ward that she was like an ant on a hot pan. Her face was pale, and she seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. Hui Xuanong looked at her hysterical expression coldly and asked, What's wrong? What happened? Is there a problem with the trust fund? Luo Jialan couldn't hide it anymore. She turned to look at Hui Xuanong and said with a bitter face, My trust fund has been frozen. I can't transfer any funds for the time being, I can't withdraw any proceeds, and I can't change any beneficiaries. What? Hua Xuanong sat up straight. His eyes were about to pop out. Frozen. Who did it? What reason? Luo Jialan gritted her teeth and told him about Gun Yanji. It was Gun Yanji. She probably didn't want us to change the beneficiaries of the trust fund. Major General Hua asked you for my father's will yesterday. I highly suspect that they got news about the will from some source. So it's better to strike first. Hua Xuanong was furious when he heard that it was Gun Yanji. He pounded the hospital bed and said, "Call me. I want to call that little B***tc Gun Yanji. What does it have to do with her mother that I'm dealing with the Hua family's assets? You called me? Call her to the ward. I want to ask her in person what she's up to." Hua Xuanong's words were exactly what Luo Jialan wanted. She immediately used the ward phone and dialed Gun Yanji's cell phone several times before handing it to Hua Xuanong. Gun Yanji happened to be in Xie Xinxing's car at the same time. After she was done suing Luo Jialan for money laundering in the Swiss court, Xie Xinxing said he would take her to his villa in the West Hills to get to know the way. Gun Yanji also wanted to go out for a walk, so she agreed. Before she left the 4th Ring Road, she received a call from an unknown number. Gun Yanji didn't want to pick up at first, but the other party persistently dialed. She checked the phone number, and it seemed to belong to the Imperial Military General Hospital. She remembered that Grandfather Hua had been sent to the Imperial Military General Hospital yesterday. She was worried that something had happened to Grandfather Hua, and it wasn't convenient for Hua Guanchen and Hua Xiaoheng to answer the phone, so she still picked up. She picked up the phone and just said, "Hello, may I ask?" Grandfather Hua's voice came from the phone. It was a little deliberate and a little forced, but it was still polite. "Yanji?" Hua Xuanong's voice was still a little weak, as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. Gun Yanji's heart tightened and she quickly said, "It's me. Grandfather Hua, how are you? Is there anything I can help you with?" "There's something. Can you come to my ward?" Hua Xuanong said as kindly as possible. "There's something that has to do with Xiaoheng. I want to ask you in person." Gun Yanji breathed a sigh of relief when she knew that Hua Xuanong was fine. If there was nothing else, she didn't want to have any contact with Hua Xuanong. "What's the matter? Can't you say it over the phone?" Gun Yanji asked tactfully. "I'm in my granduncle's car. I'm going to my granduncle's house as a guest." She had no choice but to use Xie Xinxing as a shield. Xie Xinxing looked at her with a smile and patted the back of her hand. He wasn't unhappy. Instead, he looked very approving. Gun Yanji knew that Hua Xuanong was very afraid of Xie Xinxing. But it didn't work this time. Hua Xuanong was still very insistent. "It's not convenient to talk over the phone. Also, your granduncle won't be going back right away. You can go visit him tomorrow, right? I'm different. I might not be able to breathe after a while and go just like that." "Hey, don't say that. I'll go right away, right away." Gun Yanji had no choice. The old man had even brought up his own life and death, so what reason did she have to refuse? Even if it was a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, she had to go. Of course, the Imperial Military General Hospital was still a very safe place. Gun Yanji hung up the phone and said to Xie Xinxing apologetically, "Granduncle, Grandfather Hua wants me to go to his ward now. He said he has something to tell me in person." "Okay, it's fine. I'll go with you." Xie Xinxing didn't care. He immediately asked the driver in front to turn around and drive towards the Imperial Military General Hospital. Gun Yanji thought about it and tried to call Hua Xiaoheng. The call went through on one try. "Yanji, what's wrong? Have you arrived at my granduncle's house?" Hua Xiaoheng was organizing his documents at his desk as he spoke to her through his Bluetooth headset. Gun Yanji blinked and said, "So you're free. Grandfather Hua called me just now and asked me to go to his ward immediately. He said he had something to tell me about you. I'm going to the Imperial Military General Hospital with my granduncle now." Hua Xiaoheng was slightly taken aback. "Something about me? What about me?" "How would I know? You'll know when you get there." Gun Yanji relaxed. "Maybe it's something embarrassing about your childhood, Mr. Hua?" Hua Xiaoheng curled his lips. "You're thinking too much, Mrs. Hua. Wait, I'll go too. Let's meet at the entrance of the Imperial Military General Hospital. This is the first chapter of the day, Chapter 1317, Strike First and Gain the Upper Hand. A reminder for everyone about the monthly votes and recommendation votes. It's still the third watch today. At around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the monthly votes will be added at 2,700 in advance. I don't think it's 2,700 yet, but it's not far from it. At around 8 o'clock in the evening, the third watch. P.S. Thank you to Helen 3500 Meatball, and Beth 1211 for the 10,000 Chidian coins each yesterday. Thank you to Sing for the 10,000 Chidian coins each yesterday. Moi. Chapter 1328. Gu Nianji grunted softly. She had never been very lively in front of unfamiliar people. Xie Xinxing asked with a smile, Xiaoheng is going too? Gu Nianji nodded. Granduncle is so smart. Major General Hua did say to go with us and asked us to wait for him at the entrance of the military general hospital. Xie Xinxing nodded approvingly. Okay, he should indeed take you with him. You're not married to him yet, so how can you meet the male elders of their family alone? Especially people like father-in-law and grandfather, they have to avoid arousing suspicion. Gu Nianji shrunk her neck in shame. Because she and Hua Xiaoheng had already gotten their marriage certificate. Legally speaking, she was indeed the daughter-in-law of the Hua family. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, they were only engaged and not married yet. Gu Nianji tried her best to act as if nothing had happened. She smiled and said, Granduncle is so nice. I know you're doing this for my own good. Of course. Xie Xinxing laughed heartily and patted her head. Don't pretend in front of Granduncle. It's good for girls to be more lively. Didn't Xiaoheng say that you're quite talkative? Why are you like a gourd with its mouth sawed off when you're with Granduncle? Gu Nianji's eyes flashed and she couldn't hide her surprise. Really? As long as you don't think I'm talkative. She then said with a bitter face. Major General Hua's father and grandfather both like quiet and virtuous girls. They probably don't like my looks. They don't like you because there's something wrong with their taste. They can only see people who are lower than them and not people who are better than them. Xie Xinxing wasn't actually a very good-tempered person, nor was he a patient person. However, he was very patient with Gu Nianji, and really treated her like a junior. Before he returned to the country, he had already asked his son, Xie Beichen, to collect a lot of information about Gu Nianji. Although the information the Xie family had collected wasn't particularly comprehensive compared to the information Hua Xiaoheng and the others had, the information he had seen was enough to make him love and pity Gu Nianji. Of course, most importantly, Gu Nianji was Hua Xiaoheng's most beloved woman, and Hua Xiaoheng was his biological sister, Xie Xian's most beloved grandson. Even if he loved her, Xie Xinxing would still value Gu Nianji very much. Moreover, Gu Nianji's biological aunt, Gu Tian, had once married a distant relative of the Xies. Speaking of which, they really were in-laws. There was no problem with the Xie family being Gu Nianji's family. Xie Xinxing didn't want Gu Nianji to be too restrained in front of him, so he smiled and said, You and Xie Qingying are cousins, right? Gu Nianji held her phone and said nervously, Xie Qingying is my cousin. Her mother Gu Tian is my aunt. But my aunt passed away a long time ago. I only met them recently, so I don't have much contact with them. Xie Qingying's father, Xie Dezhao, had remarried. His current in-law was the Long family of the famous speaker Long, so Gu Nianji was embarrassed to claim Xie Dezhao's relatives. Xie Qingying is a daughter of the Xie family. Since you're cousins with her, you're in-laws of the Xie family. What's there to be embarrassed about? Xie Xinxing could tell that Gu Nianji was a little like Hua Xiaoheng when he was young. No wonder he was the one who raised her. Xie Xinxing wanted to laugh. Gu Nianji nodded. I understand. I'll visit my cousin's family more in the future. If your cousin's family needs to visit, we need to visit even more. Xie Xinxing had already started planning Gu Nianji's wedding. Our Xie family and your Gu family are both abroad. The custom of foreign marriages is for the bride to hold the wedding. How about this? Our Xie family will hold the wedding for you and Xiaoheng. In a few days, when your uncle returns to China, we'll hold an engagement party for you and Xiaoheng at the Diaotai State Guest House. If you get married, where do you want to hold the wedding? Gu Nianji's heart pounded when she heard this. She wasn't ready to be a bride yet. After hesitating for a moment, she said honestly, I haven't thought about it yet. Can Granduncle wait until I've thought about it? Ah. Yes, of course you can. Xie Xinxing laughed heartily. But don't think about it for too long. You have to understand our Xiaoheng's feelings. He's not young anymore. When Gu Nianji heard this, she couldn't help but think of the revenge from the 30-year-old man that day. Her face turned red and she immediately changed the topic. Is Uncle going back to China? It's all thanks to him that we were able to successfully file a lawsuit against the trust fund. Gu Nianji had proposed to freeze the trust fund under Luo Jialan's name in the name of money laundering, but the plaintiff wasn't her. Instead, it was a person in charge of the European Union's banking regulator that Xie Beichen had hired to hire Gu Nianji to be the external lawyer of the European Union's banking regulator. Only then would she have the authority to file a complaint in the Swiss court. Yes, your Uncle Bachin will be back in 2 weeks. These 2 weeks should be enough for them to prepare for an engagement party, Xie Xinxing said with a smile. He didn't need to worry about the specific preparations. The Xie family had professionals to take care of it. The old and young chatted along the way, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. When they were about to reach the Imperial Military General Hospital, Xie Xinxing received calls from General Ji, Speaker Long, and Prime Minister Bai Jianqing. All three of them expressed their sincere greetings and warm welcome to Xie Xinxing, and expressed their intention to visit him. Xie Xinxing smiled and exchanged a few pleasantries with them. In the end, he set the date for their visit tomorrow morning at the Xie family's villa in the West Mountains. After the call ended, the car had already arrived at the entrance of the Imperial Military General Hospital. Hua Xiaoheng's private car was already waiting there. Hua Xiaoheng's chauffeur greeted Xie Xinxing's chauffeur, and the two cars drove into the hospital one after another. They stopped in front of an 18-story building surrounded by green trees, lawns, and a winding pavilion that looked like a jade belt. Hua Xuanong's VIP ward was in this building. The car door opened and Hua Xiaoheng got out of the car first. He walked to Xie Xinxing's car and opened the door for them. Xie Xinxing held Hua Xiaoheng's hand as he got out of the car. He looked up at the ordinary-looking high-rise building and said lightly, "If your grandfather's illness is too serious, why don't we send him to a special sanatorium to recuperate?" This kind of special sanatorium wasn't an ordinary one. Hua Xiaoheng smiled. "Does granduncle have any recommendations?" "That depends on how well your grandfather recovers," Xie Xinxing said meaningfully. "If he's already recovered, he naturally doesn't have to go. If he's terminally ill, for the sake of his safety, he naturally has to be sent to the best sanatorium." Hua Xiaoheng nodded. "Granduncle has a point. Let's go see how my grandfather is recovering." Gun Yanji heard that the two of them seemed to be playing games. She glanced suspiciously at Hua Xiaoheng, then at Xie Xinxing and pondered. The group of people arrived at the ward and saw that the door was ajar. Gun Yanji knocked on the door and said sweetly, "Grandfather Hua? I'm Gun Yanji. Come in." Hua Xuanong's low and suppressed voice sounded as if he was gritting his teeth. "Gun Yanji," she turned to look at Hua Xiaoheng. Hua Xiaoheng gestured for her to enter with his gaze. When they arrived, Hua Guanshan's orderly was standing guard at the door. As soon as he saw Hua Xiaoheng arrive, he instinctively wanted to salute and greet him. Hua Xiaoheng raised his arm to stop him in time, so he only saluted. Gun Yanji pushed the door open and entered alone. She looked up and saw Hua Xuanong staring at her. His eyes were red as if they were bloodshot. Luo Jialan was actually here too. She stood by the window with her hands in the pockets of her dress pants. The window wasn't closed and a breeze blew in through the half-open window. Her hair fluttered in the wind and she looked like a fairy. Even Gun Yanji couldn't help praising her beauty in her heart. But as soon as she spoke, Gun Yanji thought expressionlessly, "I take back what I just said." Before Grandfather Hua could speak, Luo Jialan had already attacked first. "Gun Yanji, why did you go to the Swiss court to sue me for money laundering? You clearly know that it wasn't money laundering. It was my legal income." "That's strange. How would I know that it wasn't money laundering?" Gun Yanji spread her hands and immediately understood that Hua Xuanong had called her over with ill intentions. Fortunately, Hua Xiaoheng and Xie Xinxing were both at the door, so she had nothing to be afraid of. "Stop pretending. Don't you know where the money went? You're deliberately using your power to get even. I'm going to sue you in court." Luo Jialan tried her best to remain calm, but the madness in her eyes and her trembling hands revealed her fear. "I really don't know where the money went." Gun Yanji's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately stared at Luo Jialan. "But you said I used my power to get even with you. Is it because you had a grudge against me in the past?" "After thinking about it, I only had a grudge against someone when I was in Germany." Gun Yanji took a step forward and narrowed her eyes to look at Luo Jialan. "Could it be that when I was being hunted down in Germany, you were also involved?" "Haha, if that's the case, then I'm not using my power to get even with you. I'm seeking justice for myself. Heaven's net has a long arm but it never escapes. Luo Jialan, you've already been charged with 2 counts of intentional homicide. I didn't want to kill you. Don't slander me." Luo Jialan forced herself to remain calm. "I'm not talking to you anymore. I'm waiting for my lawyer to come." She finally realized that talking to Gun Yanji was full of traps. She had only threatened her with 1 sentence, but Gun Yanji had already caught hold of her weakness. She almost wanted to counterattack. Luo Jialan was so nervous that her bile almost rolled out, and her mouth was filled with bitterness. This was today's second update, Chapter 1318, Counterattack. A reminder for everyone's monthly and recommendation tickets. Monthly tickets for 2,700 plus updates were delivered. The third update was around 8 o'clock in the evening. Mwah. Chapter 1329. In the past, Luo Jialan was also sharp-tongued and smart, but in the end in front of Gun Yanji she was beaten to a pulp at any time. What a good-for-nothing. Seeing that Luo Jialan was useless, Hua Xuanong said sinisterly, Luo Jialan, how dare you? You haven't even married into our Hua family yet, and you dare to criticize our family's matters. What will happen if you marry into our family? This was to use Gun Yanji and Hua Xiaoheng's marriage as bait to make her give up on pursuing the matter of Luo Jialan's trust fund. Gun Yanji looked at Hua Xuanong calmly and said dryly, Grandfather Hua, I thought you were going to tell me about Major General Hua. Isn't the marriage between you and Xiaoheng important? Hua Xuanong ordered with a sullen expression. If you still want to marry into the family smoothly, then quickly withdraw the lawsuit. Otherwise humph. Otherwise why would you snort? Xie Xinxing pushed the door open and walked in. He sneered. Hua Xuanong, I didn't know that you were so concerned about your wife's trust fund. Xie Xinxing had actually followed them. Hua Xuanong panicked and secretly cursed Gun Yanji for being so cunning and meddlesome, but his expression remained calm. He smiled and said sarcastically, Xinxing, you're here. Have a seat. I have something to tell Yanji. She grew up with Xiaoheng in the military camp, so she doesn't know much about the ways of the world. I'm teaching her how to behave. How is she ignorant of the ways of the world? I don't know. Can you tell me in detail? Xie Xinxing's expression was better than Hua Xuanong's. We're both 1,000-year-old foxes, so why are you putting on an act in front of me? Hua Xuanong saw that Xie Xinxing was amiable and didn't scold him like he did at his house yesterday, so he felt slightly relieved. He quickly said, it's the lawsuit in which she accused Jialan's trust fund of money laundering. This was impossible. Moreover, if this matter was reported to the court, it would embarrass Xiaoheng. How can Xiaoheng show his face in public with his identity? Xie Xinxing nodded. That makes sense. But I don't understand. You clearly said that it was Luo Jialan's trust fund, and Yanji also sued Luo Jialan for money laundering. What does it have to do with Xiaoheng? Hua Xuanong. His expression abruptly changed and he was momentarily speechless. Luo Jialan was so anxious that she quickly sent a text message to Kai Xingnan asking why she hadn't come yet. Kai Xingnan had just walked out of the elevator on the floor where the ward was located. She looked up and suddenly saw a figure flash at the end of the corridor, heading towards the stairwell. From the back it looked like Hua Xiaoheng. But when he took a closer look, there was no one except for the soldier standing guard at the door of the ward. Kai Xingnan took a few hurried steps and came to the stairwell. She stuck her head out and looked around. There was indeed no one. Unwilling to give up, she walked to the door of the ward and asked the soldier on guard, Did you see anyone go in from here just now? She pointed in the direction of the stairwell. The soldier was Hua Guanqin's orderly. Upon receiving Hua Xiaoheng's instructions he immediately replied, No. Kai Xingnan thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. She mocked herself in her heart for really dreaming about what you think about during the day. She pushed open the door to Hua Xuanong's ward and walked in. Kai Xingnan saw that the spacious ward was packed full. Hua Xuanong sat on the hospital bed and glared at Gun Yanji. Luo Jialan stood by the window with her arms crossed, her face full of anxiety. Gun Yanji stood with her back facing her. Her slender back and undulating figure were really an eyesore to look at. An old man with an extraordinary bearing stood beside Gun Yanji. Although he had his hands behind his back, he looked like he would reach out to help Gun Yanji at any time. There were also two tall men in black suits standing on either side of the old man. Who was this? Luo Jialan hadn't mentioned on the phone that there was anyone else besides Gun Yanji. Kai Xingnan couldn't help glancing at Luo Jialan. Luo Jialan let out a long sigh when she saw Kai Xingnan come in. She quickly said, My lawyer is here. Gun Yanji, I won't tell you. I'll let my lawyer tell you. Gun Yanji turned around and saw that it was Kai Xingnan who had come in. She was a little amused and nodded at her. She said generously, Hello, Lawyer Kai. Kai Xingnan saw that Gun Yanji was polite and despised her for being too hypocritical. Unfortunately, all men fell for it. She nodded and said politely, Hello, Lawyer Gu. Hello, Grandfather Hua. Then she looked at the old man standing next to Gun Yanji. This is? Of course, Gunyanji wouldn't introduce him to her. The ward suddenly fell silent. Luo Jialan had no choice but to bite the bullet and say, "This is Grandfather Xie, the head of the Xie family in France." He was actually the head of the Xie family in France. Kai Xingnan was ecstatic. She was so lucky. This old man, who lived in seclusion and rarely saw anyone, had allowed her to meet him in person here. Back then, her father had put in a lot of effort and even invited him to join in the name of the Council of 100, an elite Chinese organization on Blue Planet, but he had politely declined. If she could win over this old man, her father's position in the Council of 100 would definitely rise to the next level. Kai Xingnan couldn't even care less about her client, Luo Jialan. She quickly walked up to Xie Xinxing and greeted him very politely. "Are you Grandfather Xie?" "Hello, I'm Kai Xingnan. My father is Kai Sumin. A few years ago he invited you to join the Council of 100, an elite Chinese organization on Blue Planet. Do you still remember?" Xie Xinxing didn't say anything. The two staff members beside him had already raised their hands to stop Kai Xingnan from approaching. "Lawyer Kai, please stop." Kai Xingnan awkwardly stopped in her tracks and smiled, but she glared at Gunyanji from the corner of her eyes. Why was Gunyanji so close to the head of the Xie family? Her parents were dead, so how could her family be as prominent as her own? As she lamented that Grandfather Xie was blind, she made up her mind to show off her abilities in front of Xie Xinxing. She turned to ask Luo Jialan, "Miss Luo, why did you call me here?" Luo Jialan quickly said, "Gunyanji just won't believe that I didn't launder money. Help me persuade her." Kai Xingnan nodded and said to Gunyanji expressionlessly, "My client, Luo Jialan, told me. She didn't actually want to transfer the money. She lent it to her friend." "Friend? Oh, the owner of the bank account, York? Or York's son, Seth?" Gunyanji chuckled and said lightly, "Luo Jialan, how come I didn't know that you were friends with York and Seth? When did you meet? How long have you been dating? Is there any evidence that you're friends with them?" Luo Jialan froze for a moment and looked at Kai Xingnan for help. Kai Xingnan was also speechless. She had only said friend, and she had so many questions. If she liked to show off so much, why didn't she become an actress? Kai Xingnan cursed Gunyanji silently, but she still shook her head with a smile. "I didn't say that her friend was York or Seth. Lawyer Gu is so used to talking to herself. Don't you want any evidence at all?" Gunyanji smiled and spread her hands. "I can only speculate about their relationship based on the existing facts. As for evidence, shouldn't you be the one providing it?" Kai Xingnan said confidently, "Her friend isn't York or Seth, so your speculations are baseless." "Then who is her friend?" Gunyanji immediately asked. "Yamaguchi Aiko." Kai Xingnan smiled at Gunyanji and thought to herself, hurry up and ask. I'm about to slap you in the face." Because she knew that Gunyanji's next step would be to ask Yamaguchi Aiko to testify. And Yamaguchi Aiko was long dead. How could she testify? However, Gunyanji's reaction seemed to be a beat too slow. She turned to look at Luo Jialan and repeated, "Yamaguchi Aiko? Her friend is Yamaguchi Aiko?" "Yes, do you have any questions?" Kai Xingnan raised her chin proudly, but she didn't feel happy when she saw Luo Jialan. Instead, she was a little flustered. Gunyanji didn't ask Yamaguchi Aiko any further. Instead, she narrowed her eyes at Luo Jialan and asked slowly, "Luo Jialan, are you friends with Yamaguchi Aiko? How did you meet? Can anyone prove that you're friends? As far as I know, you didn't have the chance to meet Yamaguchi Aiko when you were in the country." Before Luo Jialan went to France, she was still Hua Jialan and had been living in the military compound. Because she had to take care of Song Jining, the security around her had always been very high. It was impossible for someone like Yamaguchi Aiko to get close to her without Hua Xiaoheng knowing. Therefore, Gunyanji had a hunch that Luo Jialan must have met Yamaguchi Aiko when she went to France with Hua Xuanong to relax. At that time, Luo Jialan had nothing to do with Song Jining. Besides, Song Jining had already woken up, so she didn't need to be taken care of. Therefore, Luo Jialan's security level was cancelled. Kai Xingnan was slightly taken aback. From what Gunyanji said, she seemed to know Yamaguchi Aiko as well. What was going on? Kai Xingnan looked suspiciously between Gunyanji and Luo Jialan. Luo Jialan looked at Kai Xingnan anxiously, wanting her to speak up for her. Gunyanji also looked at Kai Xingnan. "Lawyer Kai, if your client doesn't speak, then you speak up for her. I'm sure you know how to prove that Yamaguchi Aiko and Luo Jialan are friends, right?" There was something fishy going on between Yamaguchi Aiko and Luo Jialan, and Luo Jialan didn't tell her clearly. Kai Xingnan reacted instinctively and immediately said, "No, I don't know. My client said that her money was transferred at the request of her friend Yamaguchi Aiko. I don't know anything else and she didn't tell me." Gunyenji smiled. She knew that Kai Xingnan was a typical American lawyer. At a critical moment, the most important thing was to distance herself and protect her own interests, not the interests of the client. Gunyenji's gaze fell on Luo Jialan's pale face, and her voice softened. "Miss Luo, can you tell me how you became friends with Yamaguchi Aiko? Don't tell me that you two were best friends since childhood. You want to trick us like salted fish, but salted fish also have dignity and intelligence." Luo Jialan still wanted to struggle. She pursed her lips and asked Kai Xingnan, "Lawyer Kai, do I have to say all this?" Kai Xingnan looked at Gunyenji and said sullenly, "Lawyer Gu, we haven't even gone to court yet. Why are you already interrogating my client?" Gunyenji didn't want to wait until court to question her. Yamaguchi Aiko, the long-lost name of Yamaguchi Aiko, suddenly entered her field of vision, and she was even related to Luo Jialan. Gunyenji almost couldn't control herself. Her fingernails almost dug a hole in the palm of her hand before she could calm down. Her mind raced and she quickly found an excuse. She pretended to be relaxed and said, "Didn't Grandfather Hua ask me to withdraw the lawsuit? If Miss Luo can prove that she was indeed helping a friend transfer the money, then it's not impossible to withdraw the lawsuit." When Hua Xuanong heard that she could withdraw the lawsuit, he immediately urged Luo Jialan, "Then hurry up and tell me. What are you waiting for?" This was today's third update, Chapter 1319, Useless Thing. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Good night, dear ones. Chapter 1330. Luo Jialan's mind was in a mess. Was she really going to say it? She actually didn't want to say too much about Yamaguchi Aiko. Firstly, Yamaguchi Aiko had reminded her not to mention their relationship to others. Secondly, what they had done together wasn't something that outsiders should know, especially not to Gunyenji. But the temptation was too great, she thought about it again and again. If she could get Gunyenji to drop the lawsuit by telling the truth, then the risk was worth it. Otherwise she might really have nothing left. As someone who had once owned a huge fortune, asking her to give up such a huge fortune was like asking her to die. Since that was the case, she might as well take a gamble. Luo Jialan thought that since Yamaguchi Aiko was already dead, she just had to push everything onto Yamaguchi Aiko. What was she going to say? She could only rely on her mouth. Could Gunyenji go to the grave and drag Yamaguchi Aiko out for questioning? Gunyenji waited for a while and thought that Luo Jialan would insist on not saying it now. Just as she was about to give up, Luo Jialan asked hesitantly, "If I tell you, will you really drop the lawsuit? Can you write it down in black and white?" Gunyenji raised an eyebrow and thought to herself that she was actually trying to get something for nothing. This Luo Jialan was really greedy. She didn't show it on her face at all. She smiled and said, "I can't lie to you. I said it depends. If it meets the requirements, we'll drop the lawsuit. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry, but this case will have to continue." Luo Jialan was a little disappointed. "Really? What's the difference if I say it or not?" "Then don't say it. It's fine with me. It's not my trust fund anyway. When you go to court, you'll have to say it all the same." Although Gunyenji was anxious, she wouldn't show it. Instead, she retreated in order to advance. She looked like she was saying, "If you're willing to say it." At this moment, Grandfather Hua was really anxious. He frowned and said to Luo Jialan, "What are you dawdling about? Hurry up and say it. It's more important to drop the lawsuit." She didn't say that she had to drop the lawsuit. Luo Jialan still wanted to finalize the matter. She kept glancing at Kai Xingnan. This lawyer Kai had received her $5 million advance payment, but she didn't even fart. This money was too easy to earn. Luo Jialan was deeply indignant and couldn't help saying to Kai Xingnan, "Lawyer Kai, what do you think? I can tell you, but can you guarantee that they will drop the lawsuit?" Kai Xingnan spread her hands. "I can't guarantee that." Luo Jialan's face darkened and she said, "Then why do I need a lawyer?" Kai Xingnan smiled and didn't lower herself to her level. After all, no one would say no to money. Gunyenji's eyes flashed. Luo Jialan was going to find fault with her lawyer. If Kai Xingnan left in anger, then they would lack a strong support for their questioning today. Because only when Luo Jialan's own lawyer was present would she be unable to retract her confession. Gunyenji coughed lightly and added at the right time, Lawyer Kai is a famous lawyer both at home and abroad. Miss Luo, you have Lawyer Kai to help you, so it won't be difficult for you to drop the lawsuit. Although Kai Xingnan knew that it wasn't a good thing to be praised by the other party, she still felt refreshed to hear such words come out of Gun Yanji's mouth. It was like eating raisins on Haagen-Dazs ice cream in her mouth during the hottest days. It was sweet and fragrant and full of milk flavor. It was simply amazing. It was a pity that Hu Xiaoheng wasn't here. If he were here and heard Gun Yanji say that about her with his own ears, he would definitely look at her differently. Kai Xingnan was lost in thought. Luo Jialan also felt that Kai Xingnan should be quite powerful, so she was a little more confident. She turned to look at Gun Yanji and said, "What do you want to ask?" She was going to answer Gun Yanji's question. Gun Yanji perked up and took out the recording pen. As she recorded, she asked, "Miss Luo, your lawyer just said that you didn't transfer the money yourself. You lent it to your friend. Is that true?" Luo Jialan nodded. "Yes, that's true." Her voice calmed down and her eyes focused. She focused on organizing her answer, afraid that she would say something wrong. Gun Yanji asked again, "May I ask which friend you lent it to?" "Didn't I just say that?" Luo Jialan frowned. "You forgot so quickly? Aren't you known as a genius girl with a photographic memory?" Gun Yanji chuckled. "That's because my peers are giving me face. Don't take it seriously. Please answer my question. May I ask which friend you lent it to?" Luo Jialan snorted and pursed her lips. Her lips, which were painted red, opened and closed. "Yamaguchi Aiko, my lawyer just said that." Gun Yanji nodded. "May I ask how much money you lent to Yamaguchi Aiko?" Luo Jialan hesitated for a moment and couldn't help glancing at Kai Xingnan. Kai Xingnan was lost in thought. Her eyes wandered and she had a half-smile on her face. Luo Jialan had no choice but to say honestly, 5 million euros. 5 million euros is a lot. "May I ask if you asked Yamaguchi Aiko to write an IOU when you lent it to her?" Gun Yanji blinked and began to beat around the bush. She couldn't let Luo Jialan see that she was really interested in Yamaguchi Aiko, so she tried to focus the question on the loan. Only by showing that she cared about the money Luo Jialan had lent would Luo Jialan relax her vigilance towards Yamaguchi Aiko. Gun Yanji could tell that every time Luo Jialan mentioned Yamaguchi Aiko, she would shut her mouth tightly after saying a few words. This micro-expression showed that she didn't want to say more about Yamaguchi Aiko. It also showed that she was very wary of others digging up Yamaguchi Aiko. However, Gun Yanji was a veteran at interrogating people. She could speak with confidence even under the high pressure of being surrounded by everyone in the courtroom. Luo Jialan's little trick was nothing to her. At that moment, Gun Yanji seemed to have changed into a different person. Her entire aura was different. She was no longer that pretty, soft, and adorable little girl who made people want to spoil her at first sight. Instead, she was a sharp-tongued, ruthless, and awe-inspiring court lawyer. In her field of expertise, her strong academic reserves allowed her to handle it with ease. As expected, Luo Jialan was confused by Gun Yanji's IOU. She frowned and said, "Yamaguchi Aiko is my friend. She borrowed money from me. How can I ask her to write an IOU? Even if she had written it, it would have been invalid now because Yamaguchi Aiko was already dead, and the debt would have been terminated because of her death." Luo Jialan could have given up on the claim. She had thought it through very clearly. Gun Yanji seemed to be completely following Luo Jialan's train of thought. She said regretfully, "I think the Swiss court will find it hard to believe that such a large sum of money was lent out without even an IOU. Unless what?" Luo Jialan thought about it and became anxious. That's right, how could she have forgotten? The Wuxia people could understand her and her friend's friendship, but those foreign devils couldn't. If it was a loan, they would definitely need an IOU. What should she do? Forge one at the last minute? What if she was exposed? Luo Jialan asked Gun Yanji eagerly. "Unless what? Do you know?" "Unless you can prove that you and Yamaguchi Aiko are really good friends, so good that you don't have to write an IOU to borrow money from each other. You just have to promise it verbally." Gun Yanji nodded with a smile. Her eyes were filled with encouragement, and they fell on Luo Jialan like sunlight. Luo Jialan actually felt her heart warm up and she couldn't help saying, "Oh yes, I'm indeed very good friends with Yamaguchi Aiko. We're so good that we can borrow a lot of things from each other. Not to mention money. Besides, neither she nor I are people who can't afford it. 5 million euros might be a lot to others, but to us, it's just like ordinary people borrowing 500 yuan from each other." "Do you guys need to write an IOU to borrow 500 yuan? Gun Yanji gave her a thumbs up approvingly. "Well said, that's the point. For you, a year's worth of trust fund income is a lot, right? Only 10% of the trust fund income is transferred to my bank account every year, but that 10% is 7 figures. 10% a year was 7 figures in RMB and a year's income was 8 figures. 5 million euros was only a year's income. Luo Jialan was very proud, and her aura immediately rose. Gu Nianji complimented her. Really? Then you're really rich. You're a real Miss Perfect. Luo Jialan completely relaxed and pursed her lips into a smile. She thought to herself that Gu Nianji wasn't that unreasonable after all. Only then did Gu Nianji leisurely change the topic to Yamaguchi Aiko. Then how did you meet? To be such good friends, it must have taken a long time to get along, right? Luo Jialan sank into her memories and said with a smile, I met her in a flower and tea art training class when I was in France. Really? You were in France at that time. I remember you accompanied grandfather Hua to the Xie family manor to relax. You actually had time to go to flower and tea art classes. Luo Jialan came back to her senses, and her smile turned into a bitter smile. Her eyes sparkled as she said, Yes, I didn't have many friends in France. Sometimes I felt depressed, so I went out and signed up for many training classes. I see. You guys went to relax, but you're still depressed. It looks like the Xie family isn't very friendly to you guys. Gu Nianji gave Grandfather Xie a meaningful look. Grandfather Xie didn't mind at all. He smiled with his hands behind his back and listened with relish. Gu Nianji, Luo Jialan was also a little embarrassed. She quickly glanced at Grandfather Xie. Seeing that he wasn't unhappy, she quickly said, Actually, it's not the Xie family's problem. It's me. At that time, I had just finished the lawsuit, and when I thought back to what happened to my father and mother, I naturally felt bad. Yes, that's understandable. Gu Nianji was embarrassed. Gu Nianji was the lead lawyer in that lawsuit, so of course she knew how miserable Luo Jialan was. If Grandfather Hua hadn't turned around and taken her to France, Hua Xiaoheng would have sent Luo Jialan to prison at that time. Gu Nianji covered her mouth with her fist to conceal a cough, then asked, Then what training classes did you sign up for? There was yoga, tea art, flower arrangement, fitness and language. I just wanted to fill my life up so that I wouldn't have to think about those annoying things, Luo Jialan admitted frankly. And then you met Yamaguchi Aiko in the tea art and flower arrangement training classes. Gu Nianji made a mental note and continued to ask without batting an eyelid, What was she doing at the time? How old was she? What did she look like? She was doing business in Europe. She was in her mid-20s, right? She was fair and clean, had a silver plate face, a small mouth, straight black hair, and liked to wear black-rimmed glasses. She wasn't tall and she was small and exquisite. She looked like a doll that looked like an ancient lady. Gu Nianji's heart skipped a beat and she continued, After you met Yamaguchi Aiko, was it because you two were the only Asians in the class, and you were about the same age and she deliberately befriended you, that you two became good friends at first sight? Luo Jialan was dumbfounded. What kind of monster was this Gu Nianji? How did she know what she wanted to say? This was the first update of the day, Chapter 1320, Getting Something Empty-Handed. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. There were 2 updates today. My dear friends, if the monthly votes reached 3,000 tomorrow, it would be 3 updates. The second update was around 8 o'clock in the evening. Mwah. Chapter 1331. Although she didn't want to admit Gu Nianji's speculation, Luo Jialan couldn't think of any other way to prove her friendship with Yamaguchi Aiko. She frowned and stared at Gu Nianji for a while before nodding. Yes, she's a very nice person. We hit it off right away. Really? Gu Nianji smiled sweetly. You guys became good friends so quickly? So where is she from? What are your parents' names? Do you know where his permanent residence is? Luo Jialan didn't think much of it. Are you going to check my account? No. Since you've become good friends at first sight, you should understand each other's basic situation, right? For example, where are you from, what are your parents' names, and where do you live? Does Yamaguchi Aiko know? He was trying to put himself in someone else's shoes. Luo Jialan pursed her lips. He's not a child? Who would want to know about this? Besides, when we make friends, what we value is the other party's situation. What does it have to do with family background? Vulgar, very vulgar. Oh, I thought it was human nature. After all, if one didn't know the other party's background, their friendship would be limited. Of course, Miss Luo and Yamaguchi Aiko's situation might be different. You two value each other, which is very good. Gu Nianji tilted her head. There was a hidden meaning behind her words. Luo Jialan quickly agreed. Of course, what we value is each other. We became good friends because we understood each other, not because of their family background. In other words, you don't know Yamaguchi Aiko's family background, and Yamaguchi Aiko doesn't know your family background. Gun Yinji frowned slightly and put on a puzzled expression. But why did she ask you to borrow 5 million euros? Normally, if someone didn't know about your financial situation, they wouldn't ask someone to borrow so much money, right? Luo Jialan, oh no, did I go too far? Gun Yinji's question made sense. 5 million euros was not a small amount. Even she felt the pinch when she took it out. In a moment of desperation, Luo Jialan remembered Gun Yinji's question and quickly filled in the blanks. Yes, most people wouldn't casually ask to borrow 5 million euros if they didn't know the other party's financial situation. But Yamaguchi Aiko knows a little about my family background. Think about it, I live in the Xie family's manor in France and my surname is Hua. She knows my financial situation very well. I see. There are so many people with the surname Hua, and the Xie family owns a lot of manors. As far as I know, the place you guys are staying in France is an unused manor of average value. It belongs to a distant relative of the Xie family. Just based on these two circumstances, she was able to speculate that you had the ability to borrow 5 million euros without writing an IOU. I think it's really unusual. After Gun Yinji finished speaking, she smiled at Luo Jialan. Does she think you're a fool? Or a sucker? Luo Jialan was slightly sullen. Why are you scolding me? I'm not scolding you. I just feel pity for you. Gun Yinji spread her hands and raised her eyebrows slightly. The expression on her face was playful and sly. It's obvious that you don't know her family background, but she knows yours very well. She's targeting you. This is a trap. She sees that you're stupid and rich, so who else would she lie to if not you? You don't know anything about her, but you lent her 5 million euros without even writing an IOU. Such a sucker is unprecedented, isn't it? Gun Yinji changed the topic. Luo Jialan's chest heaved in anger at Gun Yinji's indirect scolding. She was about to retort when Gun Yinji changed the topic and said, but as far as I know, Miss Luo isn't an ignorant sucker, so why did you lend her money? What's the real reason? It'll be very difficult for you to clear the suspicion of money laundering. I said it's my own money. How is it money laundering? Luo Jialan was annoyed. How is that reasonable? Assisting in money laundering is also money laundering. Gun Yinji's expression was slightly cold. If Yamaguchi Aiko is doing illegal business, you lend her money and then she returns it to you. This is laundering the income from illegal business, commonly known as money laundering. Do you understand? If you don't explain why you lent the money to her, what she used it for, and whether she was doing legitimate business, then your suspicion of money laundering will become more and more obvious. Luo Jialan was shocked by Gun Yinji's words, and her emotions fluctuated greatly. She immediately said, it's not that I don't know anything about her. She's doing business in Europe and needs money to flow. If I didn't know about this, why would I lend her money? Then what kind of legal business is Yamaguchi Aiko doing? Even if it's an investment, which industry is it in? Which company? These are all things that can be found out. Gun Yinji's topic began to revolve around Yamaguchi Aiko. Luo Jialan thought to herself, she's in the business of killing people. Why would I tell you about these things? Just as she was thinking about how to continue making up stories, Kai Xingnan, who had been listening quietly from the side, suddenly said, this is Yamaguchi Aiko's problem. It has nothing to do with my client. My client is stupid. She treated the other party as a friend, but she didn't expect to be deceived by the other party. So she was deceived of 5 million euros, and she wasn't cooperating with the other party to launder money. Kai Xingnan understood what she was getting at, so she quickly cut off Gun Yinji's line of questioning and stopped her from continuing to circle around Yamaguchi Aiko. Kai Xingnan had a feeling that there was something wrong with Yamaguchi Aiko. In that case, she could just push all the suspicions onto Yamaguchi Aiko. Yamaguchi Aiko was already a dead person anyway. As the saying goes, the dead can't testify. This was the best way to get away with it. Luo Jialan didn't expect Kai Xingnan to call her stupid, in front of so many people. She was instantly embarrassed and annoyed. But thinking about it carefully, Kai Xingnan's words were the most appropriate way to do it. Her words were unpleasant to hear, but they were effective. At least she was no longer suspected of cooperating with the money laundering, and she had become a victim. Luo Jialan had no choice but to agree. She said with a wronged expression, yes, I was tricked by her. I didn't know her real situation and intentions. I trusted her. How would I know she was lying to me? Really? Then you were tricked? You were tricked out of such a large sum of money? TSK. Hurry up and call the police. Gu Nianji took out her phone. Do you want me to call the police for you? A French, Swiss, or German police call? Which country do you choose? Why should I call the police? Luo Jialan blurted out. Yamaguchi Aiko is dead. Who can I ask for money from? Gu Nianji. After a while, her expression was solemn as she said slowly, Yamaguchi Aiko is dead? Wouldn't that mean there's no evidence? Luo Jialan's eyes flickered as she looked away and smiled dryly. I don't quite understand. Anyway, I know she's dead. Death is the most important thing, so let's forget about it. How do you know she's dead? Where did she die? Did you see the body? Or did you attend the funeral? Gu Nianji refused to give up and continued to ask. Luo Jialan was almost driven crazy by her questions. She said impatiently, dead is dead. She died in the Caribbean Sea. I heard she was killed by pirates. I didn't see the body and I didn't attend the funeral. Is that okay? What a coincidence. Did she really die in the Caribbean Sea? Gu Nianji's expression became even more solemn. To tell you the truth, when I returned to the Gu family in Barbados, I was ambushed by pirates in the Caribbean Sea near Barbados. The person who led the pirates to kill me was Yamaguchi Aiko. Luo Jialan. What the F***CK? Yamaguchi Aiko had hunted down Gu Nianji in the Caribbean Sea? As an assassin she could be said to be very dedicated. But why wasn't Gu Nianji the one who died? Her face twitched and she forced a smile. What a coincidence. Could it be that you've mistaken me for someone else? Gu Nianji looked down and took out her phone. She rummaged through the photo album on her phone for a while and said, I'm also worried that I've mistaken you for someone else. She found a photo, clicked on it and showed it to Luo Jialan. Look, is this the person? Luo Jialan glanced at it. The photo that appeared on Gu Nianji's phone was a big head photo, just like the kind of photo that was aimed at her eyes when she left customs. The front was clear and she was wearing a white silk blouse with a small round collar. Her long neck was exposed and she didn't wear those black-rimmed glasses. She could see that her skin was fair, her face was like a silver plate, her small mouth and straight black hair. It was the Yamaguchi Aiko in her memory. Luo Jialan nodded. That's her. Then she asked curiously, why do you have a photo of her? Are you sure this is Yamaguchi Aiko? Gu Nianji didn't answer directly. Take a closer look. You guys are so familiar with each other. You've been together for a few months, right? Only 2 months. Luo Jialan didn't notice the trap at all, and unknowingly told the truth. This is her. I recognized the mole on her neck the size of a grain of rice. Gu Nianji's face darkened. This is really fun. This person wasn't Yamaguchi Aiko but Yamaguchi Yuko. Luo Jialan, what's the name of this friend you made? Do you really know? Or did you deliberately hide it and lie to her face? The last sentence was harsh. Luo Jialan's head buzzed and she felt unwell. This was the second update of the day, chapter 1321. You can say she's very dedicated. A reminder for everyone's monthly votes and recommendation votes. There are 2 updates today. My dear friends, if the monthly votes reach 3,000 tomorrow, it will be 3 updates. Good night, everyone. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.